All right. The hour of 5:30 PM having arrived, I'll call to order this regular meeting of the Finance Organization and Personnel Committee. This meeting is being broadcast live on the City of Keene YouTube channel and channel 1302. The video is also streamed on the city's website and is posted on the website by the end of the next business day, barring any technical difficulty. Copies of the printed agenda are available in the wall pockets just as you enter these meeting rooms. The public will be recognized to ask questions and make comments on the agenda item under discussion. After being recognized, all remarks are to be made through the chair, and I'll not recognize an individual a second time until everyone who wishes has had a chance to speak the first time. Anyone who wishes to address the committee is asked to go to one of the microphones in the room, identify themselves by name and address prior to speaking. Written comments from the public will be accepted at the city clerk's office until Tuesday, 1 p.m. The minute taker participates remotely. Committee members, please be sure to turn on your microphones when speaking. And if the minute taker is unable to hear, they'll be asking us to either speak louder or turn on a microphone. We have all members of the committee, fairly full agenda. We'll take the regular business of the committee first and then get into the budget review right after that. So first item is drinking water. Mr. Engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don Lucio, City Engineer. Pleasure to be with you tonight. This item is similar to something I spoke with the committee about a couple weeks ago. That request was specifically related to the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, meaning stormwater and sewage. This one here is related to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. It's a different fund, but similar purpose, similar process that we have to go through. That process includes a formal authority to borrow granted by the City Council. In the past, we've argued that the approval of the CIP that shows this project being debt funded is authority to borrow. That hasn't flown with the folks at DES, so they want us to go through this process and get a vote from the council. The clerk will then sign a certificate of vote, and the city manager will sign the paperwork that they require to do that. We do expect this project was ranked number 10 in the list of state projects, applications. I think there was a total of 111 applications this round of funding statewide. We were ranked 10th. And we do expect some significant principal forgiveness associated with this loan. I can't tell you exactly what that is. They have said up to 60%, but we won't know the final principal forgiveness that's offered until the complete loan package is prepared and the documents are all kind of finalized. But we do anticipate some principal forgiveness, and it is, of course, associated with the downtown project.
Questions, members of the committee? Members of the public? Do you have anything else? Okay, how about a motion?
Sure. Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized. Thank you. Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to apply for, accept, execute, and expend the proceeds of a loan agreement with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for the downtown infrastructure project for an amount up to is that right? Yeah. Yeah? $3,801,900.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Committee members? Seeing none, all in favor? No one's opposed, unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The next item is a hazardous materials emergency preparedness grant. Chief Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Jason Martin, the acting fire chief. This agenda item request is in reference to the 2023 Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness Grant. The department applied. That better? Okay. The department applied for a grant funding to purchase an asset management tracking system named Slate Pages. The system will enhance the department's ability to label and track equipment using the QR code, so users can use that UR code to access information such as inventory, benchmarks for testing, and expiration dates. This will supplement what we use for ESO in some of our assets and tracking already. There is a 20% match for the total amount of $624.50, which will be city funded.
Questions, members of the committee? Members of the public? Seeing none. Motion, please.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept and expend the 2023 Hazardous Materials Emergency Preparedness Grant Award in the amount of $2,498.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, committee? All in favor? No one's opposed, unanimous. You have a
Thank you.
second one.
I do, thank you. The second agenda request is in reference to another grant. It's the 2021 State Homeland Security Grant, specifically for hazmat training to cover the overtime, backfill, and benefit load for members of the hazmat team to attend training. In the past, the state has only required a reimbursement packet for these predetermined trainings. This time, we attended the training, and then the state notified us that they also have changed their system, and now they require a signed grant packet to get reimbursement. So the department's reimbursement request is to cover the overtime, backfill, and benefit load of the members who attended the training. And the grant agreement has a limitation of $15,000 to $15,232. However, the department is only requesting the amount to be reimbursed of $5,293.61, which is the cost. All funds awarded by this grant are 100% covered by the state. There is no city match, and this has already been approved by the governor and the governor council.
Okay, thank you. Questions, members of the committee? Anybody in the public? Motion.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept and expend the 2021 State Homeland Security Program Award, hazardous materials training in the amount up to $15,232.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion here? Seeing none, all in favor? No one's opposed, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Youth Services. No, it is not.
Still wearing a hat. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Andy Bohannon, Deputy City Manager, filling in for Alyssa Bender tonight, who couldn't be with us, who's our Youth Services Manager. So every year, the city applies for funding assistance from the county related to the youth services, as it provides Keene and all the surrounding towns within Cheshire County. And this year, we actually picked up Jaffrey, Dublin, and Rindge as a result of Hillsborough closing its operation. So we requested a little bit more funding than we typically do from the county, and we were successful in that request. So this year's request was $51,180, and it's split. So the youth intervention program was approved for $15,600, and the JCC, or the Juvenile Court Diversion Program, was $35,580. This money goes to support the assistance of a part-time person and funding our overall operating budget for youth services. So this has been I kudos to Alyssa, who couldn't be here tonight, because she put a lot of hard work into this effort in providing this ask, and significantly more ask than what we typically ask, about $21,000 usually from from the county, and this was almost double. So it was a good job by her.
Thank you. Questions, members of the committee? Members of the public? Seeing none, looking for a motion. It's your turn.
Well, right before I make one quick question.
Yes, sir.
You said we got about 2,100,000 more. For the record, what is the total dollar amount that we were able to receive?
To total receive, we received $51,180.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just wanted to comment on that. It's great that the county did step up on this, because this is really providing services to youth outside of Keene. So, you know, the city of Keene funds the services provided to Keene residents. But there are several communities outside of our region that participate in this program and benefit, and it's very helpful that the county assists those communities in getting these benefits, these services.
Okay.
Okay,
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to do all things necessary to accept and administer funds provided by Cheshire County for youth services programs.
Second.
been moved and seconded. Any further discussion, members of the committee? Seeing none, all in favor? No one's opposed, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. From the airport.
Good evening, everyone. What we have here is we're looking to reallocate some funds from our personnel line. We just recently received funding from a ARPA grant, which was the third of a COVID-related grant. We actually executed this grant some time ago, but we just got the funds now. That grant's used to reimburse us for costs for personnel expenses. So what that did is it gave us a surplus in our personnel line. At the same time, we have this taxiway project that we've been working on, and we need to rebid that project. And we also made some changes with our engineering firm that we're using. Both of those actions caused us to incur costs that aren't reimbursable through the AIP program. So what we'd like to do is reallocate these funds that are excess in the personnel line into that project. That taxiway project will allow us to pay those costs that we incurred that aren't eligible under the AIP grant program.
Questions, members of the committee? Anybody from the public? In that case, motion.
Move to recommend that the city manager be authorized to allocate $59,000 from unspent personnel funds to the airport taxiway A reconstruction project 05J0004B.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded. Further discussion, committee? Okay, so all in favor? No one's opposed, unanimous. Thank you. Andy coming back? Move quick. You got your sneakers on.
Yeah. I have to get place to place. Andy Bohannon, Deputy City Manager. So in front of you tonight is a request for additional funding to support a capital improvement project for the West Keene Fire Station. So if you recall, back in 2023, in that particular program, we had allocated $75,000 to make improvements to the West Keene Fire Station. And that was to get us through a potential grant, if we could rebuild the building. We haven't been successful in finding grants, and so in order to keep that building and have those employees in a safe environment, putting basically mini split units in their living quarters and in the turnout gear room is definitely something that's worth the investment. So we worked with WV Engineering related to the mechanical side for their assistance. And then So we put out the bid, received several bids, but the bids were much higher than what we had originally funded. So if you recall, when we had to do the rear wall of City Hall, we borrowed $60,000 from the West Keene Fire Station. So this is kind of a little bit of a switch. So this particular request is asking for $88,988 from the City Hall Structural Repairs Project that still has yet to be done, but it's to help with the capital maintenance projects, so we can get this particular project done for the fire station. And I would say that, I would just add that this particular, if you've ever been out to West Keene Fire Station, you know that it's really old and the air quality is not so good. And so in the summertime, it can get pretty hot in there. Even though we've put temporary air conditioning in there, the turnover rate is just not good. And for the air quality of our employees, this is something that we really need to do for their health.
Thank you.
But, so the West Keene Fire Station is something that, we've been seeking grants for, and each year we push it out on our capital plan because we really hadn't been able to find any grants to support either a substantial renovation or a rebuild of that facilities. But it is an armory building, an old armory building, I think in 1970s, that was donated to the city. And we've been operating temporarily in that facility for quite a number of years. And so because there's no identified funding source for a new building or a greatly modified building, we felt it was important to at least address some of the issues that they have in the space right now, and addressing air quality is definitely one of them. This not only will help to keep the air quality and circulation, but it addresses the gases that are coming in from the apparatus bay right now to provide clean air. And since these are living quarters for our firefighters, they are there for 24-hour shifts, we felt it was important. So the money we moved to the city wall is now being moved back to help complete this project.
Questions? Members of the public? Motion.
Move to recommend that the City Council reallocate $88,988 from the City Hall Structural Repairs Project, 65J0002, to the Municipal Building Capital Maintenance Project, 65M0004.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion here? In that case, all in favor? No one's opposed? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Next item is board membership. Who's addressing this? Is that right? I got it right? Okay.
Mostly. Anyway, I've been working with the mayor and Patty on this ordinance 2024-05. It's basically some housekeeping matters. On one hand, the Bicycle and Pedestrian Path Advisory Committee, the mayor did want to add a member of the city council to that. My understanding, and I'll have to check again, but I thought I had corrected this, that the membership on the Bicycle Pedestrian Path Advisory Committee was going to be ex officio. This doesn't say that. I believe that's the case, that it was supposed to be. So it was just to add a member to the Bicycle Pedestrian Path Advisory Committee, be a member of the city council. I'm pretty sure it was to be ex officio. And then on the Human Rights Committee, the change at that point was also to add one member of the city council. A member shall be appointed by the mayor as provided. I believe that's supposed to be ex officio too, but that was the purpose of these two things. Oh, I'm sorry. You did not get the most recent edition of this, it appears. Where it says one member shall be an educator, one member shall be, and it's not ex officio, be a member representing the Keene Public Library. Because that person sits in their own capacity, not as an ex officio member, but the city councilors do sit as ex officio to the mayor. So the change would be in 2.7.12 membership, one member shall be an ex officio member of the city council. And also, and then in 2.9.91 membership, strike ex officio member representing the Keene Public Library, and the rest would be, and one member shall be an ex officio city councilor.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you comfortable with those being scriveners, just given the intent is, I think they're just functionally errors?
Yes, it's basically just housekeeping, pretty much.
If we're talking about scriveners, there's just a bonus 1 at the end of the Division 14 line.
Which one now?
Division 14, Human Rights Committee. It's, unless we want to start a second one, I think there's a, on my version, it has Human Rights Committee 1.
Oh, I see that, right,
Yeah.
Yep, no, just take that out.
So,
And if for some reason I get it wrong and Patty's not here, there will be scrivener errors at the next city council meeting.
Members of the committee? Members of the public? Mr. Mayor?
Excuse me for spacing on where you were in the agenda. I appreciate the city attorney standing in and filling you in on the details of the proposal. I would ask at this point that the committee consider putting this on more time. There are a couple of additional items that might be added to that relate to the size of the Heritage Commission and the Historic Commissions. We have the flexibility of having a minimum of 3 and a maximum of 7. We currently are with membership at the maximum of 7, with vacancies there that are creating quorum issues. So I might come back to the committee after consulting with both of those commissions with a recommendation, and we could wrap all of those together at a single time.
Sounds reasonable. Somebody want to make a motion?
move to place ordinance O 2024-05 on more time.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, so all in favor? No one's opposed, it's unanimous. All right, so item 8 on our agenda is our annual review of the city's proposed budget. And we have a lot of folks here that have contributed to the construction of this program, and lots of folks that I'm sure want to speak to their particular part of it. So we're going to welcome each person who wishes to when we get to that part on the budget. As normal, we'll hear information from those folks that are proposing any portion of the budget. Committee members may have questions as it goes through, and at the end of each section, anybody else in the public who wants to comment to that particular section will be welcome to come forward. There are several lists going around. I think this was probably the current agenda with pages where you are in the budget. And, okay, we'll begin with comments from the city manager. And it's kind of our intention to try to get everybody in here in a reasonable amount of time tonight. We haven't overscheduled, so we've got plenty of time. And we'll probably take a break around 7 just to give everybody a chance to stand up and have their knees crack and move around a little bit, and then we'll keep on moving. We're scheduled to be here 3 more nights to go through this process. So if you think of something that you haven't said, you can get that back to us later. With that,
Thank you.
Madam Manager.
Thank you. I think this is my 7th or 8th budget that I have presented to you, and I would say that this is the most challenging one. You know, each year I work with your fiscal policy and bring the budget in under the fiscal policy, and I also look at the overall impact to the tax rate. The portion that we can control, which is the municipal portion, we obviously can't control the portion of the tax rate that is calculated by the schools and the county's budget. And the last several years, the school's budget has been really impacting the overall tax rate. So I talked about this last Thursday. The city's overall tax rate dropped 2 of the last 3 years, which was great news. Last year, the city's portion of the rate increased only slightly, 2.7%, or 24 cents. This year, the city's portion of the rate is expected to increase 7.57%, or 95%. That's in your budget books on page 14 and 15. The school's budget is also estimated to increase the rate by $1.52, and the county is decreasing by 1 cent. There are a few unknowns related to the school's portion of the rate. There are several legislative bills that have been making their way through the process that would impact the funding sources coming from the state for the school. And then every year, before tax rate setting time, the school returns unspent funds that's applied to the tax rate. In the last several years, it's been about $1 million, and so we've been able to drop the rate, and each time we have an estimate, it's come in much lower than our estimate at budget time, which has been good news. We never want it to be the opposite of that. So, for example, last year during the budget process, we were estimating the school's portion of the tax rate to increase by $1.18, and actually it only increased by 67, which was a 51-cent difference. Therefore, the school portion of the tax rate estimate in your book is the worst-case scenario. The proposed budget is $423,366 below your city fiscal policy limit, which is what I work with as my guideline to put together the budget. When all the budget numbers were in, I needed to make adjustments to revenue and expenses equal to over $1.5 million. Then Finance did a tax rate calculation, and I made an additional changes over $423,000 to bring the municipal impact under $1 on the rate. The chart on page 9 of your budget book, and for anyone in the audience, it is available on our website. It should be on the front of the page, but front web page, but it's also in the finance section. But page 9 of the budget book illustrates the primary budget driver is the increased cost in wages. Wage adjustments are tied to contracted bargaining union agreements and non-union wage adjustments, which include a 3% cost of living COLA. Also included is an estimated $30,500, which is the delta for the KCE and ASME contract change to 3% COLA as well. $1,463,730 of the $2,251,000 and change in the overall budget increase is related to wages. The remaining difference, $787,000, is primarily the increase of cost of human services, specifically the $400,000 increase in rental assistance, leaving only relatively small operational adjustments throughout the budget. The fiscal policy limits property tax revenue increases to a rolling 3-year average of the Boston, Cambridge, Newton CPI net of expenditures required by law and debt service payments and capital leases. This year, that average was 4.9%. And the fiscal policy breakdown is on page 6 of your budget book. So I just want to call attention to that. 4.9% is a 3-year rolling average, and we are using a 3% COLA. That's based on some contracts that were negotiated and then bringing some equality to the non-union as well. The first year of the city's capital improvement program has been updated in the fiscal '25 budget. In order for the budget proposal to comply with fiscal policy, it was necessary to adjust the funding scenario of one project, the Keene Police Department crime scene van. In addition, I removed the $70,000 allocation for the master plan already appropriated mid-year. The capital plan appropriations start on page 47. Last Thursday evening at City Council, I talked about concerns related to our city assessment and the rapid rise in residential market values each year since 2021. The city last went through a citywide property reval in 2021 to bring its real estate assessments to market value. Tonight, the city assessor, Dan Langell, will get into a bit more detail about this subject. We are scheduled to do our next reval as part of next year's budget, so in fiscal '26. But we would like feedback as to whether or not we should consider moving this project up. There are pros and cons that need to be carefully considered. The overall impact would be felt greatest by homeowners, and the biggest impact would likely be to homeowners of what has been the more affordable housing units, such as mobile homes. The assessment equalization ratio for the city has dropped the past year from 80.9% to 72.8%. This means that the median sale price in the city is 27.2% higher than their assessed values. This equalization ratio must be applied to our overall value of utility properties in the city. This is creating issues for the second year in a row. We are estimating a loss of approximately $6 million in utility value. This shifts some of the tax burden over to other property owners and affects our overall tax rate. To bring the budget into compliance with the fiscal policy adjustments, I have made adjustments to accounts for vacancies in the police department, community development department, and fire department. 2 police officer positions are not included in the budgeted wage line. That was just over $208,000. The addition of funds to support the fire marshal is included in both the community development department, 20%, and fire department, 80%. This is mostly offset by reducing budgeted funds for one of the 2 fire department deputy positions funded at 50%, and the building health official also funded at 50%. And to be clear, it's applying a vacancy number to those positions. It's not eliminating them from the salary schedule. I do have some good news to share this evening. Our purchasing office just bid out the city's electricity contracts, and we reviewed the results yesterday. Even sourcing 100% green energy, we will be able to reduce our overall city electricity costs for fiscal '25, so in our proposed budget that you have, by $90,000 in the general fund and $90,000 in the other funds. In addition, the tax rate estimates in the book are based on a conservative projection of values, which includes a net increase of $4 million after the utility loss of $6 million. The number was estimated several months ago at the beginning of the budget process. However, today I met with the finance director and city assessor and was provided with the most up-to-date information related to assessments. Remembering, property value is set as of April 1st, and we've been updating values since that date. We are estimating now an additional $8 million of assessed value. These 2 changes drop the estimated increase in the municipal portion of the rate from 95 cents to 86 cents. Overall, it is a difficult balancing act with lots of moving parts to construct a budget that meets your fiscal policy limitations while continuing to provide services at the levels expected. Tonight, as you begin the page-by-page review of the budget, you will see the operational increases are in fact minimal when compared to the overall budget. We are a service provider, and wages and benefits are tied to the level of service expected by the council and the community. So I have an updated handout for the committee this evening with the changes that I mentioned related to assessments and the overall change related to utility values. And with that, I would like to turn it over to the finance director.
Thank you, City Manager. Mary Howe, Finance Director. Before I start going through everything to get this going, there's a couple things. I want to start off by saying, I think you realize after you look at the book, it has gone through a major transformation this year. We are using a new publishing tool called Pattern Stream, and it is integrated with the financial software, so we were able to more easily pull out the information for the budget information from the software itself directly. So as we made our tweaks and changes as we went, we could actually reprint the pages of the book. So it's a brand-new format. It's now in line with more of the color palette and branding of the city. So we hope that, you know, you like the new look. It is still a little bit of a work in process, but we're open to suggestions if there's anything you want to see a little bit different for the next budget. So we hope you do like the new format. And before we start, I want to say that I want to give a very special thank you to Karen Gray. She is the accounting and fund manager who is retiring May 24th and moving to Florida. So I think we should all pack up and have these meetings in Florida. She won't be too far from the beach. And you know, without her hard work and efforts, the budget book and how it looks this year probably would not look as nice and at the caliber that you're looking at. If it was just up to me, it may not be as pretty. So she will be missed. She's been a valuable asset to all of the departments within the city. She's been a go-to, and you know, we wish her nothing but the best as she packs up and moves to Florida and starts the next chapter of her life in Florida on a sunny beach. So, and then another recognition I want to give tonight is Rob Constable. He is my Assistant Finance Director, and he has been the glue that has helped keep some of the office together as we have been knee-deep in this new process and also being short-staffed. So I greatly appreciate him being part of our team and the efforts that he's put in to keep things moving forward for us in a positive direction, and all of the help he has been in transitioning the rest of the software from our legacy system into Munis. So without these two people, what we do would not be possible, plus the rest of the team that takes care of everything else for the city. So between payroll, accounts payable, and accounts receivable, I'm very fortunate to have the team that I have. So, and before we jump in, I always say this every year, on page 13 is one of my favorite charts. It is the allocation of the proposed property tax by the city departments. So you can see where your property tax bill gets dispersed. It's not just a check that you write to the city, it's a check that funds all of these 20 different departments. And the allocation that you see, you know, like for example, you know, on a $200,000 house, $458.96 goes to funding your portion of the fire department. So when you look at it piecemeal, it really is a lot of service that you do get for your property taxes. So, okay, and on that note, you probably don't want to hear me talk about things like that, so we'll move on to the other pages of the budget book. We start off by some summaries that we have for revenue and expenditures on pages 16 through, revenues go from 16 through page 20, and they go from summary to detail, so you can see where all the money is that comes into the city and what departments bring in what for funds. And then the next page that we have is page 21, and it's our supplemental requests. And these are all the requests that come in from the different departments for what they want to have in their budget this year or what they need. They're reviewed in the process with all the departments and with the city manager, and then the city manager and I and the team come together and we look at what we really truly can afford in the budget, and the city manager makes the decision. So everything that comes forward from the departments isn't always, you know, provided or a given to make it into the budget. They are looked at and reviewed, and the city manager makes a very difficult decision as to what stays and what doesn't. And that's page 21 and 22. And then beginning on page 23 through pages 32, we have all of the information pertaining to the expenditure budget summarized by department on page 23, and then by all the individual account numbers or object codes, as we refer to them now, on pages 24 through page, there's a long way here, through 30. And then on page 31 and 32, we break out just the departments by what they have for personnel costs versus operating. So any questions so far? Nope. Okay. On page 33, we have a summary of our debt and where we're standing with our debt payments. And on page 34 and 35 is a listing of all of the outstanding debts with the balances that we have or projecting for June 30, 2025, as well as our proposed debt. And then we will be going to, we went to bond last summer with New Hampshire Bond Bank, and we're actually in the process now of doing our FY24 bond request with New Hampshire Bond Bank. I can't tell you what the rates are projected right now, but they weren't too bad. I want to say they were under 4%, I believe, when they did their last issue. So I'll keep you posted on the process as we get more of that information. So, Mr. Chair, would you like me to continue with some of the mayor and council information?
Sure.
Okay. So on pages 40 and 41, we have the mayor and council budget. There is a small increase this year of $9,485. Mainly, that is due to the $7,000 to replace the Chromebooks. They were not part of the PC replacement program, but they will be part of the replacement program moving forward. But it's $7,000 for that. And then we are increasing the advertising for public hearings by $1,000 and moving to Adobe Pro. Their licenses for this year will be $1,485 for the mayor and council and clerk's office. So, any questions? Okay. Next up are our outside agencies, and I'm going to ask Natalie Darcy, who is the Human Services Manager, to present an overview of the budget process and how the decisions were made to move the funding sources forward and what agencies were getting what this year.
Good evening. So historically, Human Services has been tasked with taking the lead on outside agency funding. This year, the committee consisted of individuals from Human Services, Purchasing, and a member of the City Council. The committee worked diligently to assure that any organization that wanted the opportunity to apply would have the opportunity to do so. Recommendations for funding is based in part on each agency's response under the following criteria: the impact on the city if the agency was not in operation, the agency provides a service with a direct financial impact on expenditures of city departments, the number and percentages of Keene residents served by the agency, other local service agencies providing similar services, financial impact in terms of prevention and intervention services that potentially saves future city savings, and demonstrated efforts to cooperate and avoid duplication with other agencies. This year, Human Services received 13 requests for agency funding. The committee met with agencies in February via Zoom to discuss agency requests. The committee then met and made recommendations that were forwarded to the city manager for budget review. As a note, 100 Night Shelter is not part of the outside agency process, as it is now a general assistance line item, as the Southwestern Community Services shelters are as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Additional information?
So the reason we moved 100 Nights to the Human Services budget is because we have a memorandum of understanding or agreement with them, similar to our relationship with the SES, so it didn't really make sense to put them in the same category, as we do set expectations in that memorandum for our arrangement between the shelter and the city. And then also I wanted to mention in the requests, there were a couple items that were not either reviewed or supported. So the first one was a request from Monadnock Family Services for $35,000, and this was to help fund their outreach, their homeless outreach person, which had previously been funded through a grant. They have had a homeless outreach person since the early 90s. That was submitted to the committee for review. It did not move forward because they felt it was duplication to the city's outreach. However, I have added it to the budget, so you will see it's in the proposed budget. And the reason for that is my intention is to create an agreement with them as well as to how their outreach worker will coordinate with ours. So we have a part-time outreach worker out of Natalie's office, and there's enough demand to support both of these. And I think that we can really find ways to collaborate more if we're part of it. So I did include that $35,000 in my proposed budget. The other is something that wasn't part of the committee's review, but is in this section. It's a $50,000 contribution for the Monadnock Interfaith Group's request for a housing development fund. So this housing development fund would be managed by Monadnock Economic Development Corporation, and the goal is to create funds that people and developers can access to bring about additional housing. Now, one of the stipulations I talked about is this is a regional fund. Any funds that we would contribute would be for Keene projects only. When I went to the council to ask for additional funds for homeless response here at the city, we needed an additional $900,000 this year. The council said to me, I want you to think of more ways than just funding rental assistance. And so this was one way I thought we could help to contribute to housing availability. And the other way is this additional relationship with MFS and outreach. And you will also see in my budget when we talk about Natalie's office, I'm also increasing the number of hours we're doing for outreach as well. The outreach has been very productive for us. It's been very effective. They've been working with homeless individuals that we have in temporary housing in the community and moving them on to permanent housing, and it's made a difference because we've done some case management. And I know Natalie will talk more about that when we review the human services budget, but I felt it was important to tie in why I have added the Monadnock Interfaith Housing Fund, which is being managed by MEDC.
Okay, questions on this section? All right, moving along.
So the next, oh,
The outside agencies.
yeah.
So. So we'll go, based on how they're entered into our.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Thank you. Community volunteer transportation, someone here from that? Ellen? Yeah? Yes. A year has passed.
A year has passed. Thank you so much for your first donation to our work for $750. As you can see in the report, or in the application, we're asking for level funding. And I think for us, what makes us unique and not duplicating efforts is our agreement with arrangement, a women's and gentlemen's agreement with HCS, who provides the bulk of the transportation for Keene residents. That, however, they don't go up to Lebanon. Well, they go up to Lebanon once a week, so with their van. So we recommend to some of our Keene residents that call us to go up to Lebanon that if their appointment's on Wednesday, we've got a really good program through HCS to go through. But when the appointment is not on a Wednesday, CVTC's mission is to take Keene residents outside of Keene where HCS doesn't go. And in the proposal, last year, we served 31 riders and 92 rides, and 30 of those rides went up to Lebanon. So, and we've been to Vermont, we've been down to Boston, Massachusetts, Natick, Mass, I mean, all over the state as well as out of the state. And so I think we offer a nice balance of services between HCS and CVTC, and especially through our volunteer driver program. So I'm asking for level funding, which is $750 to support that work.
Thank you. Questions up here? Yes, ma'am?
I was just curious, do any of the people that you serve ever offer even a small donation for?
Yes, ma'am. Oftentimes when someone calls us, a potential rider calls us to check us out, they ask, of course, they want to know how much the rides are, and for the funds, the federal funds that we use preclude us from charging a fare, and so there is no fee for the rider, and we say, but we do take donations, and our drivers have donation envelopes with them and quickly hand it over and that type of thing. So that's a regular practice, and I'd say over the course of the year, we probably bring in about $8,500. So you're welcome. That's a great question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senior Citizen Center.
Good evening. I'm Mary Jensen. I'm the Executive Director of Keene Senior Citizens, which we commonly call the Keene Senior Center. And thank you for having me, and thank you for funding the request that we made at the same level as last year. I wanted to start with letting you know that, as you may know, the Senior Center has moved. We sold our building on Court Street last week, and we have moved to the home health care building where we are renting the former Castle Center. So we have had the advantage of additional parking available at HCS, which we did not have at the center on Court Street. And that has allowed us to increase our membership in the 4 months that we've been there. We based our request to you on our membership fee, which we deliberately keep as low as we feel we can afford, because about half of our memberships receive $50,000 or less in income every year, and we want this to be a senior center that all seniors can afford to be in. We also do work with them, any seniors, on budgeting and take monthly payments and do those kinds of things to facilitate membership by every member of the community. This year, I checked yesterday in our database, and 65% of our members are from Keene, and that we requested that our number has increased since we moved because we have more parking and it's a more accessible building, especially for people who've got disabilities. We had around about 12 100 sign-ins a month. That's of our members. They come back repeatedly for exercise classes, wellness programming, workshops. We have partnered with Southwest Community Services, with Keene Housing Authority to have people come in and talk about housing options and transportation options and other things for members, because those are the biggest questions that we get from people who are trying to downsize from a larger house to a smaller house, and how can they do that. And so we did ask for $19,350, and you've kindly put us in for $16,500. But if at any chance there's an opportunity to add the $2,850, we would certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. Questions here? Yes, ma'am.
So what does 65% of members from Keene translate in terms of numbers?
Numbers. So right now, we have 276 seniors from Keene. Welcome.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for your time.
Monadnock substance abuse. Anyone? Okay. Big brothers, big sisters. Okay. And the Keene Community Kitchen.
My name is Gina Burke. I am the board chair for the Community Kitchen.
And I'm Rye Capron. I'm the co-chair of the Community Kitchen.
Our executive director is on vacation, so sorry that you got the B team tonight, but we're going to try our best. So we are here as board leaders to represent the Community Kitchen and express our gratitude to the consistent partnership that the city has offered us in sustaining our impact on food security to residents for over 40 years. 6 days a week, we offer hot meals to our guests and enough pantry food to support 9 meals per week. Whenever possible, we seek to offer referrals and education to enhance our guests' ability to secure additional resources for themselves and make the best use of food that we are able to provide. Similar to the challenges facing our guests, sustaining the operations of our organization has been complex. Our landscape has shifted by the state of our economy, policy changes, and governmental investments that impact state, national economic security programs, and changes to the food availability in the USDA and food banking systems, and the local nonprofit and food charity landscape. To achieve our mission and meet the needs of our guests, we must be alert, creative, and responsive. In recent decades, the Community Kitchen has developed a strong network as we strive to provide value to our partners, all of whom strive to ensure that all residents of our city and our region are able to thrive. We are the largest food security organization in our region with staff of 15 members. Since 2019, we have been serving as the backbone organization of the Monadnock Food Pantries Collective, a Monadnock United Way Collective Impact Program, in collaboration with Monadnock Farm and Community Coalition, Dartmouth Hitchcock Keene Center for Population Health, and others. And we are developing a mobile food pantry to help reach the most vulnerable community members who lack access to transportation and serve as a barrier for accessing nutritious food.
We also wanted to highlight some of our meaningful partnerships within the city. Since 100 Nights has moved into their new building, we are providing dinner services to their new location, which is almost $10,000, 10,000 meals at 100 Nights since they've opened their doors in August. The past few months, we've also restarted our partnership program with the city to provide weekly pantry boxes to about 8 to 10 families that are being transitioned into housing at area hotels. Partnerships like these and other agencies like the Serenity Center, the Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention, and the Senior Center facilitate delivery of nutritional components along with their essential services that these agencies provide. We've hosted community leaders at the Martin Luther King Day events program for lunch and breakfast with a partnership with the Human Rights Committee. And we plan on participating in the Juneteenth celebration, just to name a few things that we've done with the local area agencies. The community kitchen has seen an increase of 42% of the number of meals they've served since 2023 when compared to 2022. We've experienced an impact in inflation by spending an average of 2.5 times more food. The spending average of 2.5 times more food than in the years prior, for a total number of meals that we served of 348,000, which is 22% of those were for children under the age of 18, and 27.4%, again, you're dealing with a B team, sorry, 27.4% were served where elders were 65 and up. We are excited to continue the partnership with Keene, and we are making it a vibrant community in which we live and play, and we welcome any questions that you guys have.
Thank you. Questions here? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was a great presentation. I don't think it was B team. I think you did a good job. You mentioned the mobile food pantry. Our next group probably up is Meals on Wheels from HCS. Is there a partnership at all or any conversations between those organizations? Because driving by each other is like my least favorite thing that nonprofits sometimes do to deliver services.
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. I feel like our mobile food pantry is trying to seek outside of Keene, so we're really looking to expand where that's going. So these would be towns like Gilsum, Fitzwilliam, Dublin, Chesterfield, that kind of thing. So I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but I bet Sarah knows and could update you about that.
Yeah, and I can also just add into that we had one of our staff members go through the Hannah Grimes Center when they were actually looking at the mobile food pantries. So if you have additional questions, I'm sure we can answer that because they are looking at that as a whole and how we can partner with other organizations.
Yeah.
So I love the mobile food pantry idea. If you remember, we talked about in our conversations related to human services and our work with outreach and shelters, one of the concerns we have is we are always requiring people to come here instead of meeting people where they are. So it's great that they are taking on this initiative. I think it's going to make a difference for the communities around us.
Are you able to give us enlightenment?
Susan Ashworth with Home Healthcare Hospice and Community Services and the Meals on Wheels program. I think the Meals on Wheels program and the mobile food pantry serve two very different populations. Meals on Wheels is delivering to homebound elders, people who are not able to get to the mobile food pantry. We did participate in the mobile food pantry events to let families know that if they had an elder or a disabled individual in their home, that they would be eligible for Meals on Wheels. And we also have a congregate dining program, but this was a program where you went out and a lot of different agencies really went out with you to make sure that people not only had food, if they could get to Fitzwilliam or some of those rural communities, but also had access to a lot of different information.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
It's great that you're partnering with so many other organizations. With this mobile delivery
Yeah.
to outside towns, do you approach those towns for funds
Yes.
as well?
Yes, Sarah did put that in that proposal that she did send to the city, but there is 23 towns that she also asked for funding for in support of the community kitchen and its efforts, including the mobile pantries, and does provide numbers for how many residents we serve throughout the year from those communities.
We don't get those, that's a
Got it.
a committee.
Got it.
And then the other question I have is, there are other food pantries,
Yes.
like St. Vincent's, and I can't even remember all of them, but do you all talk to each other so that you're not duplicating services?
We sure do try to do that. Yes, absolutely. It seems like we all have our own little niche, and we're trying to stay within our own specific lanes. We're really, our big programs are our hot meals, serving hot meals 6 days a week, and then our pantry programs. Some of those are school outreach or other things. So it does seem like there's a lot of need, and people are we're trying to all make sure we're not duplicating efforts.
Thank you.
Yes.
Further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So Meals on Wheels now.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Susan Ashworth with Home Health Care Hospice and Community Services. We are sponsors of the Meals on Wheels program. I'm sure most of you know that Meals on Wheels delivers a nutritious meal to older and disabled residents of the city who are homebound and not able to prepare a meal for themselves. This year, we will serve 46,000 meals to 221 Keene residents. Meals are delivered Monday through Friday, with breakfast bags and weekend meals available to those who are most at risk nutritionally or who have the greatest food insecurity. Over 2/3 of our participants are under 150% of the poverty level. Most live alone, and over half are over the age of 80. The program is more than a meal, though. It's a daily safety check on some of the most at-risk residents of Keene. The drivers deliver a meal and a helping of good cheer. In many cases, the driver is the only person that elder is going to see during the day. But service doesn't end with that delivery. If a person is not home, we call their emergency contact to follow up. We're following up on any concerns that the driver brings back to the program manager, and we help people connect with other resources. Hopefully, this will help people not come to City Human Services or not call the ambulance because we are intervening early in the situation. So we're seeking 40 cents a meal to help defray the increasing costs in food that we're experiencing, and we want to continue to serve all residents who request Meals on Wheels and not have a waiting list. So our total request is $18,362. We
Thank you.
appreciate your support over the years.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Southwest Community Services. Keith?
Excuse me, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss our organization tonight, and thank you for the past support and the allegiances and alliances and collaborations we have with the city. I don't think either one of us could do it alone. So it's been we really appreciate those alliances. I'm going to refer briefly to a report that you have.
Pull that closer to you,
Sure.
please. Thank you.
I'm going to report briefly about a report that you have. We do this for every city and town in Cheshire and Sullivan counties. We call it our town funding program. We ask each city and town to fund SCS at 1% of the funding that we provide to that town. So if we bring $600,000 to a town, we'll ask them to give us $600. And we have a limit of $10,000, and Keene's been at that limit ever since I've been involved in this program. But we have, in 2023, we did provide just under $6.2 million of direct assistance to City of Keene residents. We assisted City of Keene residents over 6,000 times individually. We had a number of programs that the city could take advantage of, such as our LIWAP, our Low-Income Water Assistance Program, which has since ended. It was COVID funded. Any town that had a municipal system was able to participate. That was a special program. And we have some perennial programs at the city that we fund with the city. Some of the bigger programs that we fund, our Energy Assistance Program, where we're providing just in energy close almost $1.8 million a year to City of Keene residents. Our Fuel Assistance Program is one of those energy programs. It's one of the biggest one, but in 2023, we were able to help 847 households with $1.2 million of assistance in the energy program. We also have a Head Start program, WIC nutrition program, emergency shelter and rental assistance programs as well. 9 different major federal programs. What we see, really what SCS does, among other things, is we're able to effectively bring federal money back to the region. We're putting a lot of money down into Washington, and we're able to help some of our programs, like our energy program, our WIC program, and get some of those funding back to the City of Keene residents. So we're proud of what we do. Again, the City of Keene is sitting at the sort of at that $10,000 limit, and that's what we feel is appropriate. We do have other ways that we work with the city, but this is one where we are happy to say that every city and town in the 2 counties does contribute to this fund, and we raise about $130,000 a year total for this fund. And what this is we've used these funds are for people who fall through the cracks. We've used some of these funds recently to assist a homeowner whose driveway was so bad they couldn't get an oil truck there. So they found a contractor that was willing to give them a good price, and we used about $2,500 of this kind of money to assist to get that driveway to a point where it could be accessed. So I have a lot of stories. I won't bore you with them. If anyone has any questions, I'm available. And again, we do appreciate all of the work that we do with the city and to be able to be here for the city.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Thank you very much.
So, will the manager discuss the organization of the budget this year? She talked about 100 nights, so we'll move on to Harbor Care, which was formerly HIV/AIDS. Someone here for that? Okay. And Monadnock Regional Child Advocacy. Okay. Transporting. She has 2 hats.
Like a bad penny, keep showing up here. Thank you again. I'm Susan Ashworth, and Home Healthcare Hospice and Community Services also sponsors the City Express, which provides transportation that's affordable to residents and visitors to the City of Keene. We operate 2 accessible vehicles on a fixed route Monday through Friday, with 23 regular stops at medical facilities, groceries, recreation, the library, social services to get people where they need to go. This year, we will surpass 20,000 rides, and 1,000 of those rides are to residents who needed assistance with our Para Express service, which is for those who have a transit disability and could not get to a bus stop. So we're giving mobility to all residents of our community. The service is truly public for everyone. 58% of the people that we're serving are under the age of 50, and the 42% balance are older residents. This year, I'm very pleased to say, after a lot of community outreach and input, we made a number of changes to the route. By popular demand, we added stops at the primary care clinic on Maple Avenue, at Coles Plaza, so that residents could get to Monadnock Family Services. We are stopping at Market Basket every hour now, the Monadnock Food Co-op, and the new senior center location at HCS on Marlborough Street. These changes have resulted in a 10% increase in our ridership in just the 4 months that they have been in place. We also operate the Friendly Bus for older residents and provided an additional 5,600 rides to older residents who needed that door-to-door service. As you heard from CVTC, we are going once a week to White River Junction and to Dartmouth Hitchcock in Lebanon for those who need those specialty services. About 20% of our trips are to medical facilities, and the majority of the other trips are to groceries. Without these services, residents would certainly have difficulty accessing the necessities of life. So we're seeking a 3% increase in our funding over last year to address the spike that we're experiencing in gas prices and to be competitive in this very tight labor market for CDL drivers. The funding provides matching money for our DOT grant, which is critical to our operations. So the funding that the city provides is matched 50-50 with our DOT grant, stretching the city's funds for this program. We have also applied to the Department of Transportation for 3 replacement vehicles to maintain our fleet as safe, reliable, and certainly cost-effective to keep maintenance costs down for residents. And we appreciate your consideration of this request so that we can continue to provide the service to residents.
Thank you. Questions up here? Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I won't show up again. This time.
Keens Kids Collaborative. Yes. Whoops. We'll come back to Cass, so that's fine.
You sure? I don't mind waiting.
No. Just don't wear bifocals.
Good evening. My name is Sally Millay. I'm the Executive Director of the Keene Housing Kids Collaborative. I want to thank the chair, councillors, the committee, staff, and the city manager for reviewing our application and the opportunity to talk to you tonight. Just as a quick recap, our mission is to attain upward social mobility for kids living in low-income households through out-of-school and summer learning opportunities. We want to reduce the opportunity gap by removing financial barriers for these kids to access the social emotional learning tools that will help them in the classroom and beyond. We are ultimately working towards breaking the cycle of poverty, and we just want to help fertilize the environment for the kids as they grow and develop so that they can become economically independent adults in our community. We serve 650 children from birth to 17. 75% of those kids live in Keene. We have founded on research that there's a 6,000-hour learning gap for these kids and kids from more affluent households by the time they get to middle school. And if you kind of calculate that out, that's around 500 hours a year. One of the things that we're doing just to try to help people understand our financial needs to make this happen for the kids is if we just even take a conservative approach to try and provide them 300 of those 500 hours to help close that gap, and we use a very conservative $10 an hour for registration, the youth program services, that's around $3,000 a year it would cost to invest in the kids compared to what parents of more affluent households are spending around $8,000 a year per child to get those same levels of opportunity. So 65% of children that are born into low-income households stay there through adulthood. We're trying to reduce that outcome. The annual median household income for our families is $23,000. And in 23, 224 of 300 kids that were served in the Keene area, we had a 47% increase in participation. We provided 336 weeks of summer camp. We put 23 kids through driver's education. We provided 2,500 rides, transportation rides to and from these youth activities, and we distributed over 1,700 books. So our budget this year for youth program expenses is around $263,000. Last year we did receive a big grant from DHHS of $100,000, which actually helped this increased impact that we had. But now it's up to us to replace that. Those funds were COVID funds. So one thing to note is that all of that money that we raise is actually reinvested back into our local economy to other local nonprofits and small businesses that are providing these high-quality activities for the kids. Last year, we also did approach the town of Swansea, and we have actually in the past. This year, we were successful. They will also be contributing to our financial need. But the benefits to the city is with this early intervention is that we're increasing school attendance, engagement, and achievement. We're helping decrease behavioural referrals in school and decreasing special education enrolment. So ultimately, the other thing to note is that every dollar that we raise goes directly to these fees. Our overheads are covered by a service fee from Keene Housing and Southwestern Community Services. So none of this funding goes to salaries or overhead expenses. We are a unique service provider. No one else provides this type of intervention in our community. And ultimately, we're creating healthy outcomes through bonding, through the kids being able to bond with positive role models in our community. They're integrated with their peers, which helps them also at school. They have a sense of belonging and purpose, and we're helping strengthen families. So again, I appreciate your support, and it is an investment into this program, and we hope to continue the impact that we've been having. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions up here?
How do you make these families aware that you exist, and what is the application process, and are there some kids that you end up having to deny, and how do you determine that?
Thank you for asking that question, Councillor. We work very closely with Keene Housing and Southwestern Community Services. So as soon as a family leases up on property or receives a rent subsidy, or leases up with Southwestern Community Services, we work with the property managers, and they let us know. We have an MOU of agreement that they can get a release signed at that time from the family, and then we are able to reach out to them directly. So they're told about it as soon as they start that relationship with the housing organizations. So there's no application fee. They don't have, their residency is their eligibility and their application. We do a lot of outreach to make sure our families understand that it is at no cost to them. And we don't have a waiting list as such, but we do have parameters on what we can provide simply because of our funding. So if we did spend that $3,000 on the 224 kids that did do activities through Keene, that would be a budget of close to $700,000. We only have $200,000 to spend. So we do have limits on what we're able to provide, but that's why we want to continue to grow and sustain ourselves so we can be removing all of those parameters and providing the kids what they need.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now, CASA.
Good evening, and thank you very much for what you've done in the past and what hopefully we'll do in the future. My name is Joanne Stroshine. I live in Keene. I am a CASA volunteer, so I am not, like the other speakers, going to be able to give you a lot of background and details. I've been asked to represent CASA at this meeting. CASA, the mission of CASA of New Hampshire is to provide a voice for abused and neglected children and youth in the courtroom. And it's totally volunteer. CASAs spend many hours, drive many miles on their own with no reimbursement, and happy to do so. Some of the statistics that I do have are state or county statistics, but they can be translated into Keene statistics. In Keene, 2023, fiscal year 2023, we service 70 children from 33 families in Keene. It is estimated that it costs CASA about $2,000 per year per student or per child. Most of that money goes into training, salaries for program managers, and I can tell you that the training is well worth it. We're not lawyers, and yet we have to appear in court and advocate for the children in the most effective way possible. So most of the training is geared toward understanding trauma in children and being able to apply it to our cases. We deal, of course, with a lot of drug abuse. 67% in the state are opioid issues. Just recently, there was a baby that was brought to Cheshire Hospital who had OD'd. The baby survived, but I'm hopeful that that case was reported to DCYF or to the police. Apparently, the baby was crawling on the floor and picked up a piece of something and ended up in the hospital. Those are the kinds of things that CASAs get called on. Unfortunately, because we don't have enough CASAs, 18 children were refused, had to be refused services by CASA last year. A guardian ad litem that is a lawyer can get paid as much as $60 an hour to represent the children. And the guardian ad litem doesn't have the time to do what the CASA does in terms of meeting with the children, meeting with teachers, meeting with neighbors, friends, relatives, and services such as MFS, MDS, all of the social organizations that you see in Keene all around the town. Last year, I believe your commitment was $4,000. We're asking for an increase of $1,000 this year because of the increase that we're anticipating. We knew that once COVID ended, we were going to start getting more applications, more referrals. And sure enough, that's what happened. So we need to have more training done. The training is ongoing. Every time a new RSA has to be enacted, we get trained in that, just as the attorneys do and the judges do. And that costs money. And we're trying very hard to recruit new members, which also takes money for advertising. But it's working. It is working. I can say that the reports that I've received from the last training sessions have been very positive in terms of the volunteers that are stepping up. So can I answer any questions for you?
Thank you very much. Any questions up here? Yes, ma'am.
I think that that's really commendable. It's tough work. And I attended one of those volunteer welcoming, I don't know what you want to call it, get-together, and it sounds like it's very, very difficult work. So the money that you're asking for is because you're volunteers, it would be for the training?
It's for the training. It's also for staff. Every office, we have the office here in Keene that's attached to the Cheshire Court, and there are 2 program managers that are there who are invaluable to those of us who are volunteers. Again, we're not lawyers, and issues come up that we need questions, and they are right there to answer them for us, to help us through them. If need be, they'll go attend court with us. If that's something, right now I'm working through an adoption, and so I'm working with the state attorney for CASA to facilitate that, to make sure I don't do the wrong thing. It's been a great learning experience in many ways, very challenging, but also very rewarding.
Thank you.
So program managers and training. Thank you.
Thank you. Kids, black.
You just did that one.
All right. The Samaritans and the Nine Equity both do not have an appropriation. Are they here to please?
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
Okay, fine. Banana crisis. Yeah. MCVP.
I can't hear back here.
MCVP? Oh, okay. And MFS Street Outreach? All righty. And MIP Housing Fund? Oh, right. 2. 3.
Good evening. I'm Tom Julius, Chair of the Monadnock Interfaith Project Board, and I'll let my other colleagues introduce themselves.
Angela Pape, MIP Community Organizer.
Cody Morrison, Executive Director of the Monadnock Economic Development Corporation.
So first of all, would like to compliment the city and city staff in particular on really taking a systems approach to the housing challenge, a challenge that many of us recognize doesn't have any one solution. There's no silver bullet to it. But we've observed the city really working hard to explore strategies that have been successful in other communities. So I want to, first of all, for those of you who are not familiar with the Interfaith Project, just take a brief moment to explain that. We are a coalition, nonpartisan, nonprofit coalition of congregations, including the Monadnock Covenant Church, the Keene Unitarian Universalists, the United Church of Christ, St. James Episcopal, and the Ahavas Ahim Synagogue right here in Keene. And we also have wholehearted individuals who are part of the Interfaith Project. Our mission is to build and foster community and understanding and work for positive systems change in our community. What our methods are very grassroots. We listen to the concerns of people in our region, and when we started doing that about 3 years ago, we started to go through a series of listening sessions. What did we hear? Housing, housing, and housing continually came up. We interviewed business leaders, public officials who were having trouble finding employees because of the housing challenge in this region. And that led us to identify a particular strategy, housing development funds, that we've seen be successful in many other, over 700 communities around the country. And I'll let Angela, ask Angela to kind of describe that.
Sure. I'm going to talk for a moment, and then we'll have Cody talk for a moment. So I really want to thank you for putting funds into this proposed budget. As many of you know, MIP has been working towards this with many stakeholders for several years. We're really motivated by a lot of the stories we hear in the community. There are people whose rent just keeps going up and up and up. Sometimes it's a little bit at a time. Sometimes it's a $400 increase. There are people whose homes have holes in the wall, their windows weren't open. We know people who there's 2 parents working that can't afford to buy a house in our region. So there's many stories that motivate us towards creating this housing development fund and having this tool to help increase the number of units in our region and rehab. I also, most of you probably remember this, but I thought it was really striking that in the Keene's housing assessment report, strategy 1A was create. They used different language. I think it was create an affordable housing trust fund. But essentially it was create a fund that then you can help support other things, whether it's rehab, whether it's helping to support developers to close gap funding, et cetera. And I know the city had always said, we don't want to do this on our own. We want it to be part of a regional approach. And so that's why it's very exciting that MEDC and Cody has really stepped forward, and we totally respect and will honor the request for city monies to stay in and support city projects. I also just want to say that there's conversations happening at the state level around state funding. We have a group of a couple of financial leaders and bank leaders that are pursuing business funding. And so we think it would be most successful if it's a public-private partnership.
And to echo previous comments, thank you all for allowing us the opportunity to come and meet you and speak with you all tonight and to discuss our plans and our vision for a regional housing development fund with funding from potentially the city that would be used for Keene projects specifically. And our organization, the Monadnock Economic Development Corporation, is stepping into housing over the past couple of years in response to ongoing concerns among employers when they all come to us with the same concerns: housing, childcare, workforce. We need people, we need people, we need people. And for our organization, we know that this is an issue that we cannot sit on the sidelines for. So we partnered with MIP a couple years ago to help support a grassroots effort on the creation of a fund that would provide flexible capital for local housing projects. And this is really based off of the lack of a subordinate debt market in New Hampshire. On the commercial, on the business side, that market does exist. However, on housing, the ecosystem really does not. So using our ability in kind of grant making and lending for commercial projects throughout the years, we're opening this avenue to housing to be able to help be part of the solution. So we anticipate that these funds will be used to leverage at least 4 to 1 to make those dollars go further, to be bigger impact in smaller projects to help create and rehabilitate housing units. We recently helped close on a housing project here in the region that achieved a 68 to 1 leverage ratio. So we hope that this fund will be able to renovate at least 10 units per year every time that the fund goes out. These will be orchestrated or set up as loans that will be made available to projects and to landlords that are looking for either renovation projects, acquisition, or those that are looking for accessory dwelling units at their own homes. But we have had many conversations with city staff, with businesses, and other organizations throughout the region, and we're excited to be here at this point, and we will open up to any questions if there are any.
Okay. Yes, sir.
We live in a capitalist society, and it's all about making profits. And over the past couple of years, we've seen houses approved, but they're in the 400, maybe even higher range. You have any idea how much a minimum profit would be for someone to build sustainable housing or low-cost housing? Because if I build a $400,000, $500,000 house, I may make a profit of $100,000, but there has to be a certain level of profit working in to entice people to build smaller houses, or kind of like the old GI loan type of houses.
Sure, and on our fund, with our lending practices, we prioritize projects that are affordable, that combine other affordable housing or affordable funding mechanisms, so that they can be available for your police officers, your waitresses, your school teachers, and everybody else that are seeking either early or mid-career positions. The target for our program is not necessarily on single-family residential development. The home that I live in may not be the target of this. However, if there is a developer that is looking at putting together a subdivision and needs help financing infrastructure, or if Angela Pape LLC has a 2-unit apartment building and needs a little bit of help with weatherization funding, those are the types of projects that are available and accessible to those throughout the socioeconomic spectrum, but particularly those on the lower end.
And I would also say that what we've seen in many communities is that housing development funds, much of the money often goes to nonprofit developers, those who aren't trying to maximize as much money as they can.
Listening to what all three of you have said, I don't want to say you all, like if I was down from Georgia, but it appears that basically right now you're in the position of doing everything possible to preserve housing and bring housing up to a safety code level. And so we're growing the need, and you guys are running like crazy just to preserve what we have, or close the windows during the winter, or just have some place that's secure.
And we strongly feel that safe and sanitary housing is just as important as a new unit may be. If you are, let's say, a traveling doctor that's coming to work over at Cheshire Medical and you are welcomed to a substandard apartment unit, you may be less inclined or less incentivized to want to remain in that community. So we want to provide safe, sanitary, affordable, and available housing through this program and other areas that we work in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the next section, I would ask to recuse myself because I'm on leadership position on 2 of the requesting organizations, and I'd rather not sit up here if that's okay.
Shall we get all the, you want to do a break or you want to, get a lot of guests in here. Okay with you? All right.
Is it okay if I recuse?
Yeah, we'll let you.
All right.
Don't forget where we are.
He just wants to have supper.
Okay, community funding. Any preliminary remarks?
All right, so the next section is community-funded events, which I think a lot of people in the audience are here for. It's on page 45 of your budget books. And so in the budget, we have calculated a number for $73,835. That is up from last year, which was $48,750. So, and the increase in cost is due to a few things. There's just an overall increase in cost to hold these events. We have increased in the budget the DMAR. In the past, it had been capped. I think they were capping themselves, or I don't know if someone capped them in the past, but they were at $5,000, and the maximum cap is 10, so I have adjusted them to 10,000. And then we've added a new festival, the Keene Pride Festival, for $10,000, and that brings you to your new total.
Thank you. So, Independence Eve, who's handling that? Kevin, how's the ball team coming?
You look good. It's always changing. Kevin Waterson, I reside at 10 Westview Avenue, Keene, New Hampshire. I'm here tonight representing the Keene Swamp Bats. Specifically, for the last 20 years, we've hosted the City of Keene's Independence Eve, July 4th fireworks celebration. Our ask is 100% relative to fire and police that are necessary to operate Independence Eve. Traditionally, our attendance at this event is approximately 5,000 fans, and as you can imagine, a strong fire and police presence truly is critical to delivering a safe evening. We want to thank the City of Keene for its collaborative partnership that allow us to take this event on.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you at the park.
Yes. 4 on the 4th road race. Okay. Clarence DeMar, Mr. Stroshine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, Alan Stroshine, 27 Salisbury Road, race director for the Clarence DeMar Marathon and proud member of the Keene Elm City Rotary Club. I'm here in my annual stead to thank you for past support and thank you even more for the increase in the budget since we had been level funded since 2012. This event's been going on since 1978 in Keene, and it was 2012 that the Elm City Rotary took responsibility for it and really turned it into a true community event. And we have a long list of community partners that make this event happen. Some of the biggest are Keene State College, Cheshire Medical Center, and the City of Keene. But I would say the City of Keene is what has really allowed us to bring this event to be one of the premier events in the city, with the collaboration we have with many city departments focusing on many details that make this an award-winning event as viewed across the country. So the partnership is more than just city funding to go toward fire and police and public works and city clerk and finance. It's really in making this event truly the gold standard, I think, events in the city. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Good job. Thank you very much.
Hope to see you all on Sunday, September 29th.
Fire Prevention Parade. Okay, that's standard in October. Just stand on Main Street, you'll see the whole thing. The Keene Music Festival.
Hello again to some of you. Hi there, I'm Pablo Fleischman, representing the Keene Music Fest. I own property here in Keene, live up in Marlow. And thank you for supporting this event, which has been going on since 2001. The city has been generously, with open arms and smiles, providing public services, police, fire, public works, parking. I believe that's about it, and everyone's invited. It's free. It's a 100% volunteer run, and we really appreciate the support we get from the city. We feel like it's a great event for that one day a year, August 31st this year, the Saturday of Labor Day. We typically provide really nice weather as well.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Kiwanis Keene tree lighting. Oh, okay, we all know that event. Santa will be there. Keene Ice and Snow Festival. Another great event. Pumpkin Festival. Yes, sir. Will we have another spectator, or do we have another spectator to watch the Pumpkin Festival? No?
Another
Not yet?
I don't know what you're talking about. Hi. Mike Giacomo, president of the Let It Shine Board, host of the Keene Pumpkin Festival, 615 Hurricane Road in Keene. Thank you so much for your support last year. As you saw in the budget, the city's total expenditure, I believe it went over the amount we were allocated by about $3,000, which we obviously paid the city back for. We don't expect that to change much in the coming years. Right now, the city services represent roughly 15 to 20% of the total festival cost. So obviously, we greatly appreciate the relief that's provided as far as helping out with some city services. It's obviously a huge event for downtown businesses, although we're making sure that it's staying not as huge as it used to be. It is still has some significant benefit. We're expecting around 10,000 people. We're hoping for this year, so even at a spending of about $20 a person, we're still looking at a $10,000 turning into $200,000 benefit to the community. In addition, the festival also indirectly benefits the nonprofits that have food booths at it, as well as local artists and artisans that have their booths there, and of course the hospitality industry with the hotels and everything going to be busy that weekend. We have this past year, this coming year rather, we're going to be moving it to the weekend of fall break for Keene State. We've been working closely with the president of Keene State as well as with the city staff. We expect that to continue to the 2025 festival, which this budget hearing is regarding. And that will enable us to basically have 2 weekends in a row, hopefully with a good crowd in town, both for Parents Weekend the following weekend and Pumpkin Fest for that one. So we appreciate the support that you've provided us in the past, and we've been working very closely with the city to make sure that this festival remains a sustainable model going forward, and we thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions?
Good to see you, Counselor.
Nope, that's a past life.
Yeah.
Good seeing you guys too, though. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Taste of Keene.
I moved from over there. I came back in this door. So I came here to answer any questions about Taste of Keene. This is for next June's festival, the one coming up in a few short weeks. It was part of last year's budget. We are very early for me to try to tell you what we're going to do for the 25 festival, as we're about to pull off the 24 festival, but our intent is for it to be largely the same as what we're about to do. Moving most everything right onto Main Street, and everything will be right here between here and Ted's. So looks like it's going to be a very similar event. But any questions you guys have, happy to answer. I think we're at 45 vendors this year.
Nice. Questions?
Okay.
Thank you. Keene Pride Festival, and this is a new in this year's budget.
Hello, how are you? I'm Adam Tepfer. I live at 411 Winchester Street here in Keene. I'm board president of Keene Pride, and every year, well, for the past 2 years, we've been producing the Keene Pride Weekend Festival right here in Central Square in downtown. We've had 2 really successful years. We have upwards of 5,000 people in attendance. We have over 100 vendors coming. We had over 100 vendors last year. We'll probably have over 100 vendors this year as well. It's really supportive to the community and businesses and other nonprofits as well. And this year's festival is going to be on September 15th. And we're really super thankful to the city for allowing us to do this here. I think it's really wonderful, and it's been just such an incredible couple of years. And we're just looking for assistance with city services, police, fire, public works. Same thing. Yep.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So let's take about a quick 5-minute break here. Everybody get up and stretch. And we'll blast through here.
I had to go cut.
City Manager's Office? Okay.
Just real quick, the capital fund appropriations are on page 47, and those are from your recently adopted capital plan, which is on page 48. And as I mentioned in my opening, 48 and 49, and as I mentioned in my opening comments, I only made 2 adjustments, and that was to the crime scene ban and removal of the master plan, because it's already been funded. Then,
Questions on that?
no, okay. All right, so city manager's budget starts on page 54. Well, I guess 52 is the description. So 52 and 53. The chart is on 54, and then the budget starts on 55. My section of the budget looks a little different this year because we eliminated the assistant city manager roles and phased out the special projects role, which is currently being held by Ed Kupczynski, who's retiring at the end of this fiscal year. And instead, it now includes the 2 deputy city manager positions. One of those positions is partially allocated to the parking fund, so 40% of that position is in parking. And then our emergency management director retired, and there is currently no one readily available and qualified for the role. So we brought Court Blomquist back via a contract to assist with our hazard mitigation plan, move our emergency operations room to the 2nd floor training room, be our emergency contact, and continue all the coordination and training with Homeland Security, and ultimately help us train a replacement, which we haven't yet identified for you because it is the city council that will make that appointment. As a side note, the state is now using a platform, a different platform on Web EOC to manage and communicate with communities on planned and unplanned incidents, severe weather events, floods, etc. This is a web-based platform and can be accessed from any location. To have access to the platform, a person needs to be designated by the community and attend the training. So Court is obviously going to be designated and attend this training, but so will Andy, Rebecca, and I, mostly just for communication purposes and tracking of an event, should we have one. And then on page 56, there's a small increase in meeting and dues of $1,985. That's for Deputy Bohannon's membership and participation in ICMA, Primex, and the New Hampshire Municipal Managers Group. A little bit further down on that same page is, that is our Deputy City Manager, Landry, as well as that first section includes our AV production specialist. That is Asa. Thank you, Asa, who's running the control room right now. So we have 40% of her position now allocated to the general fund, and the other 60% is being funded by the cable franchise fee. So that looks different. It wasn't in there before. And the only other difference is what I mentioned, which is Deputy City Manager Landry's wages, as 40% is allocated to parking because she's assumed the oversight of parking, which was previously handled by Med Kupczynski. So those changes, the AV Tech, 40% moved to general fund, the Emergency Management Director contract, and the addition of the $1,985 in meeting dues and memberships make up the total of the supplementals that are being requested. And then I also just want to mention, it's not in the budget book, but there was a supplemental request for $10,000 for the Greater Monadnock Branding Project. I originally included it in the marketing and branding portion of the city's budget, and I do support this request and the work that they are doing. It was cut in my second round of cuts as I was attempting to lower the tax rate impacts. With no objections from the council, I am planning to fund this first year request in the current budget using fiscal '24 funds. already budgeted that I anticipate will be available after some work we are doing to our website. As this will be an ongoing request, we will need to create a new line in the fiscal '26 budget to support the request moving forward.
Questions? Thank you. City Attorney.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Mullen City Attorney. Usually the city manager and I are the shortest, but she took a little bit more time than I will tonight. And I am the semi-retired city attorney, but after telling you after last night and tonight, doesn't quite feel that way, but semi in quotes. Anyway, my budget is, the numbers are on page 61 of your budget book. As you know, above the line is all of the magic people over in finance take care of that. And below the line is basically our operating side of the house. You'll see essentially that it's a flatline budget at this point. Basically, nothing is changing from years past. You'll note that we do still have the outside legal services line, and I appreciate that and continuing that. That's one of those areas that can be a little bit unpredictable in my office, depending upon the year and what may occur. We have done carryovers in the past, and I'll talk to the city manager about that this year as well. When we get closer to the end of the fiscal year and the next couple of months, I'll have a sort of a good idea where we're at on that. But that's the presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have any.
Questions?
Excellent. I'm now off the clock. Night.
Good evening. My budget starts on page 62 with the narrative. And I want to start off with expressing my appreciation for the manager and her funding of our several supplemental requests, and the details can be found on page 21. It includes the civic clerk application, which is what you use to access your agendas. That was previously funded from the cable franchise funds, and that fund can no longer support this activity, so it is being moved into the IT budget. Not mine, but the IT budget, so, because it's a cloud application. There are other supplemental increases in the budget. They deal with my retirement and ongoing expenses associated with our new technology we're using to check in voters on election days, an slight increase for staffing for elections, and some direct expenses associated with the actual presidential election. Our achievements for the last year included the charter amendment on the municipal primaries, and I think we finally have hit that right balance that sort of recognizes the value of the primary, but attempts to sort of mitigate the cost for conducting it for all races. So it'll only be the mayor, ward councilor, and councilor at large positions that'll be on a primary ballot. All the other election officials will just be on the general. Also, earlier this week, we deployed phase 1 of the Right to Know software. It's called Just FOIA. We've had 2 requests so far. I'm glad it's a little bit slow as we're all learning how to do it. Phase 2 will be deployed pretty much on its heels of phase 1. But this application, phase 2, will have the capability of having online dynamic forms that sort of respond to the requester's input. It asks further clarifying questions to sort of refine the request. So that'll be a big change for us to sort of really narrow in on exactly what the requester is looking for in their request. We have 3 major goals for this year. Obviously, the state primary, followed by that presidential election. They're always challenging, and this one will definitely be very challenging and quite exhausting, I'm certain. As a fun practice, we're designing our Office 365 communication and departmental team pages. That's really exciting because it's such a revolutionary, transformational change, and it's just amazing. that I can be part of it. So I'm really excited about that. And then finally, speaking of my retirement, it is coming up in 2025, and our last goal is to make sure the department has a smooth transition, and we have a smooth transition in terms of your support. So thank you.
How many days is it?
I'm at 51 weeks, starting next Monday.
And the last day is a wake-up day. That's how you refer to the last day. It's a wake
Okay,
up.
wake up, good enough, I'll remember that.
Questions for the short timer? Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Daniel?
Good evening, Dan Langell, I'm the city assessor. My budget begins, I believe, on page 70 and goes through the revenue on page 73. Don't lose that page, that's an important one. And then we go on to page 74 to go over the expenditures. So you're not going to really see much difference from my budget from years past. Most of it is, the changes are due to staffing and just our staff moving up in the different levels. So I will be happy to answer any questions related to my budget, but really I'd like to take the rest of my time here to go over what Elizabeth spoke about earlier tonight, and that's just where our values are in our revaluation. Our last one was in 2021. At that time, there was a lot of concerns with where the values were going at that time. The market certainly hasn't slowed down since then. And our next one is scheduled for 2026 at this point. We are required to do one at least every 5 years, but we do have the option to do it earlier if we choose to do so. So to kind of understand why, where our values are at, and even why we're considering bumping up our revaluation is, in 2021, as of April 1st, we brought our values to 100% of market value. But at the end of that year, the ratio was already at 94% of market value. You go the following year, drop down to 80%. This year, we're at 72%. And looking at sales now, we'll be lucky to be in the 70s, high 60s this year. The residential market, apartments are significantly increasing in value, which is no surprise probably to anybody here who's paying attention. We do have a legal requirement to keep our assessments at market value. There's a legal range for that. It's between 90 and 110%. Typically, when you fall out of that range, the state asks that you do revaluation, or you start taking steps to move in that direction. In speaking with the Department of Revenue, there's no concerns on their end with where our valuations are at. There's no concerns for us being forced to do one earlier from their perspective, because what Keene is going through is not unique to us. It's a statewide issue, if not a nationwide issue, where the values are just far outpacing how communities can keep up with them in their assessments. So one of the reasons why it would be nice to do a revaluation is, sure, our statistics would match. We'd stop losing the extra valuation from the utility side, and the tax rate would go down. I mean, who doesn't want that, right? We saw that in 2021. We had a tax rate at $37, it went down to $31 when we did that. We have a tax rate of $31 now. If I brought values up to market, you'd have a tax rate in the low 20s. What that doesn't mean, though, is that people's tax bills go down. You open up your tax bill, and you're going to see at least the same amount. Some people would, still see an increase. Revaluations are tax revenue neutral. We don't bring in any more revenue because values increase. We don't lose any revenue because values decrease. It's just a matter of proportioning them out. The reason why tax bills go up or down for any taxpayer during a revaluation is mostly because of a tax shift. We saw this definitely in 2021, where residential properties were increasing significantly. Commercial properties weren't keeping up at that same rate. So that tax burden shifted over where residential property owners were picking up more of it and commercial was picking up less. Certain properties also increase or decrease at different rates, different neighborhoods. Supply and demand comes into impact. Maybe it's more of a demand for single one-level homes versus multi-story homes. There's a number of reasons why a property may go up down more. So if your property goes up higher than the overall ratio of the city, then you're going to see a tax increase. If it happens to go down, then you may see a tax decrease. But again, the city doesn't take in any more money. So with this, I mean, yes, we could do a revaluation earlier, and yes, we'd have a lower tax rate. Tax bills wouldn't be changing, and the concern would be that your lower income homeowners would see a bigger impact, because the demand for housing at the entry-level rate is pretty significant right now. Manufactured homes, any homes that used to be valued in the city around $200,000, they're easily selling for $400,000, because people with money are just looking for any kind of housing, and those houses can be outbid for. So you may see a bigger impact to those who can least afford it. We do have to do a revaluation at some point. We do have to do one in 2026. We are legally required to. And at that time, it really will be time to do so. So it's important to at least understand that at some point, the property owners are going to see their values increase, and they're going to increase significantly. But that doesn't mean that their taxes necessarily would be going up in proportion to those increases. But the more that we can understand this now, hopefully the less stress it will be during that time when we're going through that revaluation. We always do hold public hearings and give an opportunity for owners to review their values prior to that. So with that, I'll take any specific questions about my budget, upcoming revaluation, or property values in general.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The ratio you're referring to, the 70, was 76?
72.8.
72%. Is that across all of commercial and residential?
So that's the overall median value. So
Do you know the
we
difference?
we do stratify that by different values. Residential is probably right at 72. That's a majority of the value in the city. Manufactured home is probably less than that. They're probably closer to 60%. Those values would be at least doubling. Commercial, actually, we are seeing a pretty decent amount in commercial value, so they're still high 70s, 80%. A lot of that's being driven by the demand for apartment complexes, that kind of commercial property.
Not
necessarily industrial or anything.
Thank you. It's helpful to understand where those impacts would be, because you see a shift off of commercial back onto residential again.
Potentially. Yeah.
Else? For those who aren't really aware of how the utilities situation works, can you just give a thumbnail sketch of that?
Yep.
Because it does have an impact.
It does. So utility values, it's the one class of property that we bring up to market every year. So we take a look at all utility properties in Keene. Right now, it's about $114 million in value, so it's not insignificant by any means. So when we have to bring up to market value, we then have to apply the current equalization ratio to that value, and that's what gets used in our overall general fund. So when you have a value of $100+ million and you have a ratio around 70–80%, you're taking $20–30 million off that value, which then has to be picked up by everybody else. The other part of that, of course, is if you raise the value for everyone else to bring the market up 100%, you also bring up the utility value. So where exactly that difference is, it's hard to predict. But we are losing a significant amount of value every year because of that ratio. And that is state law.
Okay. Any budget questions for? So, thoughts on early reval or work it out?
I agree that we should do it early instead of later. I was in the State House when we were fighting to tax telephone poles and everything. And they'd be more than happy that we don't do this, because they're gonna save money. When you're saying like Keene has a problem, everybody else has a problem, that's an awful lot of money they're going to be saving in taxes if we don't do it. And I think we maintain credibility with the people of Keene with saying we're doing our best to have everyone pay their equal share. And I understand where you're coming from, because even again yesterday, my granddaughter looked up at my house on Zillow, and I go, wow, it just went up $9,000 in value in the last 7 days, and now it's about $120,000 more than what my assessed value is when I'm paying my taxes. No, you don't have to put it up what Zillow says, but it does. But as I've been looking over the last year and a half, it's just been going up, and up. And so, yeah, I know to me, my house isn't worth $288,000, but I know it's worth more than what my assessed value is. And so, if I'm not paying my fair share, there's other people like me not paying their fair share, and other people have to make it up, or you have to cut services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not, I don't know if you're actually asking for this right now, but I'm not interested in doing it early, because the way that with the fact that you're adjusting every year for the utilities and the fact that you're bringing it down to the ratio, in theory, if you brought everyone up, you wouldn't bring them up at all. In theory, would be all of a sudden scaled correctly, potentially. They could move a little, depending on whether they, in theory, have increased faster or slower than residential markets in the city. So I don't think potentially risking shifting onto manufactured housing that much of a burden while you're not required to make that adjustment yet. I think we should wait, personally.
Anything to say?
I can chime in real quick. I have to agree with that sentiment that I'd be hesitant to do one early, given the disparity between residential and commercial value increases over the last few years. I don't think pulling it forward would be the best for the citizens at the moment. So I think 2026 is a very reasonable time to do it.
Well, we've got a few thoughts, and we've got time to make those kind of decisions.
Can you turn on your microphone, please?
The council will ultimately make this decision, but try to give some advice over time here.
So I'm not hearing an overwhelming desire to expedite the process, and so we probably won't bring anything forward unless we're asked to, because we would have to start the process pretty quickly in order to go through a reval, which is a lot of work, and still be able to meet our tax rate setting timelines. So we would, we would want to hear tonight, yes, we want you to move forward. And if that's really, it's kind of up in the air still, we probably won't unless we hear something different.
Well, we had an earlier discussion about it, and basically my thought was we probably could get it done. We could, kind of level the field. However, we have so much else to do in the next year or so that it probably is not the best time, so. Okay. You've heard from us.
Since you're the expert and you keep a good eye on what's going on.
Uh-oh, scary.
So what percentage that you would expect us to be in the 26, 27 time range?
Well, 26 would bring everyone up to market, so we'd be at 100% for 26. So between now and then, yeah, so I would expect us to be in the high 60s this coming year. So for 24, we'll probably be, let's say, 68%.
Okay.
That's dropping another 4% from where we are now. And after that, like I said, we'll be revaluing the next year, so it's...
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to have all of my subdivisions or my division managers come up, as well as my assistant director, but while they're walking up here, I just want to give a brief overview. Finance department supports the organization and the public. It's comprised of 4 divisions: the accounting division, the purchasing, revenue collection, and we also manage human services as well, which, as you know, Human Services provides short-term emergency and timely assistance to eligible people to meet basic needs in accordance with state statute. Finance is staffed with 16 full-time people and 4 part-time people. And that's pretty much what I'm going to say. I'm going to leave the rest of it up to my team. Rob's the Assistant Finance Director. Rob will be doing a brief overview of our accounting division budget. And then we're just going to go on to purchasing after that, revenue collection, followed by Natalie and Human Services. Okay.
Yes, good evening. My name is Rob Constable, Assistant Director of Finance. I'll be going through the revenue section and the accounting expense budget. Our budget starts on page 81 for the revenue. The primary drivers for this coming year is interest income and permits, motor vehicles, as is projected to go up. Those are the two big significant changes. You'll notice that in 2024, we are doing, as Mary mentioned, some bonding this year. We're going to the market for $2.9 million. So when you compare 24 to 25, the budget's actually going down because we're not doing bonding. It's not budgeted right now. We are looking at bonding next year. We have to put those numbers together based on the capital budget. Going on to page 83, as discussed in previous budget discussions, payroll's our biggest expense. And we talked about the vacancies and so on, going through not only accounting but the other departments. On the operating budget side, the one big change that we have is on our audit service expense, and that's going up by about $24,000, roughly $26,000. And we're going back out to bid. Our contract with our firm is up, and we're working with Eve from procurement. You'll hear from him momentarily, but that's going to be the big driver for us on the accounting side. And I'd be happy to answer any other specific questions you may have on the accounting budget. Okay, I'll hand it off to Eve.
Good evening. Eve Gakunde, Purchasing and Contract Services Manager. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. The purchasing is a small office. We have we are just 2 in the office. But we help all the departments to spend the money wisely according to the policies and procedures that you help us put in place. As you remember, back in the fall of 2023, with your help and all the city departments, we revised the 2017 purchasing ordinance, and that allows the city manager and the central purchasing to assist the departments in securing goods and services very quickly while maintaining industry standards and internal control. After the ordinance was adopted, purchasing went on what we call the roadshow to train all those who are involved in spending money. We wanted to make sure that they understand the changes that were made, but also we provided training on purchasing cards and general bidding requirement and processes. We also help the departments to sell the surplus, and we have been very successful using gov deals. Since June last year, we have brought about a little bit over 125,000 back to the city, selling vehicles, desk, everything that was not needed, that was taking up space and was just collecting dust and mold. We have people coming from all over Alaska, Chicago, South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida to pick up vehicles, or they will buy things and they pay for shipping costs and we ship that for them. So that's really increased the competition and we're getting more money. So we are doing our good job in terms of being environmental friendly, reducing, reusing, and recycling. Jumping on my budget on page 84, I have a few changes. One is a new account, 521030, technical services with a budget of 17,328 for technical services. This is not a new or an additional cost to the city. This cost was in 20 different accounts. So we were charging the technical services different 25 accounts, and it was making it very hard for to keep track of the payment and such. So we consolidated those accounts into a new account under purchasing, and we reduced the same amount from those previous 25 accounts. There's a small increase for $600 in the budget. Maintenance office equipment, 52301. We had a 5-year contract with Pitney Bowes for the postage meter for the city hall, and that lease ended. So we entered into a new lease with Formax, and we upgraded the postage meter, which came with a $600 increase per year. And then another small increase for 500 to be able to stay up with the training and the knowledge we need to do the job we are called to do. So I think that's what I have. Take any questions you may have.
Questions? Thank you.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Chair, Councilors. Maria Castellano, Revenue Collector for the City of Keene. Revenue has had a busy year. We successfully implemented our utility billing system. Our budget remains pretty flat, except for a couple of increases. But before I go there, I just want to let you know that in collecting taxes this year, our department had a lot of success working with the Southwest Community Services, which was assisting our citizens with making payments on their water bills. Also, New Hampshire Housing was instrumental in helping a lot of our citizens pay back taxes on their property. So it was helpful to us in collecting pass-through revenue, as well as assisting them in helping them getting caught up. And we continue to work with those customers so that they can stay current with their taxes and try not to get in that similar situation. We have been short-staffed this year, but we have, we're happy to say that we have our positions filled at this time with a new employee coming in. We just had one start. So I only mention that because servicing our customers is our #1 priority. And it has been difficult, and possibly some of our customers have not been happy, but, with some delays, whether it's coming into the office. But we want to let you know that our staff, and has always remained, that our customers are our #1 priority. As far as our budget goes this year, the biggest difference for us is postage. And in saying that, I just received an email the other day, which was not very encouraging, that the U.S. Post Office has applied for a 5-cent increase again for this coming July. So I was expecting, the typical 2-cent here and a 2-cent there. So we really want to work on watching what we're mailing out, because that really is our largest expense, with our motor vehicle letters being mailed out monthly. We have 2 large mailings with our taxes that go to not only are citizen and property owners, but any additional property owners affiliated, so it can almost double that number twice a year. And our utility bills, and we bill, 3 sections. Every month, a section is being billed throughout the year. So we're trying to implement different ways. I know, Councilor Chadbourne, you had asked last year about the possibility of emailing customers. That is still on our radar. I want to let you know that. We're just waiting for everything with the systems to make sure everything else is working great before we do that. And hopefully, eventually, we'll move towards having the ability to email customers their bills. And looking forward to that also reducing the impact of postage on our budget every year. The other, and my budget, is on page 84 and 85. So the other increase you'll see is to training. The revenue collector as well as the deputy revenue collector. We have to attend a 3-year certification program where the previous revenue collector and the deputy had completed that program, so that's why that was not in the budget. So we just need to include that for the training that we need to attend this year. And then the last thing, for our technical services, our department had purchased a new folding machine to accommodate all the bills that we're mailing out. So with that, it was a 5-year service contract. Our first year was free with the purchase of the machine. And so we are responsible for paying, just for the next 4 years, an annual service contract on that machine. Well, possibly longer than that, but that's where that new amount is coming from right now. And it looks, I think there was just one small increase in software expenses.
Questions?
I knew you were going to answer.
You do it. Well, thank you for remembering last year that I asked about emailing the bills.
Yeah.
I was just curious, now that you have the, or we, the residents, have the ability to pay our taxes online, is that saving any money for the city?
So when you say saving money for the city, can you be more specific?
Yeah, well, I'm
like in the
thinking
mailing of, so we still have to mail out that bill, and then it's the customer's choice to pay online? Is that what you're asking?
Well, what I was talking about was the customer's choice to pay online. Like, are you seeing enough people doing that it saves time, and time means savings in terms of employees having to open bills and process them by hand? I'm thinking that through the computer and that kind
Sure.
of system, it's more, a less of a.
Efficient, sure.
Yeah.
So what I can share with you is that there are 2 methods of collection that are really important to the city. One being the lockbox, where customers, the envelopes that you get with your bills, those payments go directly to our financial institution, and so that is super helpful that they process those and we import them on a daily basis. The section option that customers have is they have access to our portal. We continue to do customer education on that. Still, people are not aware of how to do it or have difficulty, and we do encourage them. We'll work with them when they call. We'll say, do you know that this is an option? And we'll work with them that one time. So yes, that has definitely decreased the amount of customers coming in for taxes and water billing. It has not so much, so motor vehicle, there is also the option that customers can renew their vehicles online. You cannot make any change. So if your address has changed, if you're looking to transfer a vehicle or do any additions or changes, you're not able to do that online. And so those customers come into our office, which we've seen a high influx, which is interesting because I've been tracking that, and it was typically, when I was presenting our financial director with numbers, it was always typically in the 20s, 22, 23,000. And before coming to this meeting, I said, let me try a different report. And it said that we actually have registered over 31,000 vehicles in the city of Keene. So sometimes I don't know how the other report, I might be missing the numbers that they're adding together. And this report is coming from our third-party company that tracks information that we communicate to the state of New Hampshire Motor Vehicle. So, there's people who come in that can do several vehicles or titles or anything else. That tends to be more time-consuming. Just somebody dropping off a water bill or paying, that is not what's taking up our time. So, I know, it seems like it should reduce it. I honestly can't tell you that there has been a large reduction in that area.
So, you mentioned about, I forgot about a third party that we use. I
Sure.
completely forgot about that. But
Yes.
so when you pay online, whether it's motor vehicle, taxes, utility,
Yes.
water and sewage.
Yes.
Is that handled by this third party?
So when you say if it's handled by the third party, so are you asking if there's fees associated with that? Or are you just asking how we get the money from them?
Well, yeah, are there fees associated with that?
So yes, so for a customer to pay online via an e-check, it's $1.50 for that transaction. If they're paying by credit card, it is a 2.95%. And that is because it's a third-party processing. And how I explain to our citizens is basically that it's not a taxpayer responsibility. We're not a retail business or a commercial enterprise, so that we're unable to absorb those kinds of fees. So that fee is taken on by the customer, which, as you notice in the industry today, a lot of self-service businesses and so forth are adding additional fees to what they're doing. And that could also be a reason why some people choose not to do it online. Mhm. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Natalie Darcy, Human Service Manager. So Human Service provides short-term emergency financial assistance with housing, electric, cremation, home heating fuel, the homeless, prescription life-threatening medications. We instill an empathetic and empowering approach to providing assistance to those in need. The needs of those requesting assistance are met in the most beneficial and cost-efficient manner as possible while respecting the confidentiality of the applicants. This is accomplished through fair and uniform application of the law, the City Council-approved guidelines, while providing support in the direction necessary for life skills for the applicants by Human Services. So beginning in fiscal year '23 and continuing on into fiscal year '24, Human Services has worked with city departments to assure that homeless individuals who have been asked to leave their tents that when they were staying in the woods, also because the increased rentals, the spike in rents all throughout the city, it was caused a huge influx of assistance that has been needed to our clientele. Today, Human Services has seen 183 homeless individuals needing a temporary place to lay their head. Hotels had to be utilized for this purpose. At the height of serving homeless individuals, the city had over 20 hotel rooms in one specific hotel and another 15 in another. So we're looking at 35 rooms. Some individuals have since found housing. Others are still in the hotel. As shelter beds come available, individuals from the hotels are moved into shelter beds as they can. Some families do not fit into the shelter spaces. And so we have brought it down to, I want to say, 4 rooms at that hotel where we had 20. And also we have about 8 remaining in the other hotel. Also, clients are asked to pay and be accountable for a part of their own stay. Currently, Human Services has received in reimbursements $19,244.74 from clients who have been utilizing these hotel rooms. It does pale in the comparison of the $501,239.60 that has been spent, but it does make them accountable and responsible for some of their own expenses. Because of the added expense, the hotels, we have had to ask for and enter another $450,000 on top of the usual 300,000 line item for a total of 750,000. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, whether this is going to be a continuing trend or not. I feel like we have seen the peak, and we're starting to come down on some of these issues. Some of the individuals who have been in hotels are not allowed back in them. Some of them have found other housing, so there's a variety of reasons why they have left. Let's see. Currently, shelter beds are practically full every single night, and there is no space. Southwestern Community Services has been wonderful in letting us know immediately when shelter beds are available so that we can move clients on. The other line items are, we've had to increase on office supplies as we had to outfit our new outreach worker, which I'm going to introduce shortly. Human Services continues to provide case management, participate in the Homeless Coalition, and other groups that support the homeless in a wraparound fashion. We work with the hospital and the Cheshire County House of Correction to find solutions to those who are placed on the streets, and with the drug court program. And then following a discharge from either the jail or from hospitals. Human Services also continues to collaborate with community partners in the area to provide the many services our clients need and depend on. Human Services continues to coordinate the holiday sponsorship program. That's a fun thing in the midst of all of this, and assists approximately 280 individuals per year. So this year, we did add the part-time outreach worker, Brenda Emperor. And Brenda, why don't you come on up? And we're going to ask her to say a few words about how she's been interacting with the homeless. In addition, Human Services filled a part-time administrative assistant position, Carrie Johnson, which was very well needed.
Hi, I'm Brenda Emperor. I'm the new outreach worker here. It's been very profitable, and it's been really good happening that I get to talk to other community partners. We've talked to the sheriff, and he is trying to figure out a way to tell us before they're evicted, so maybe we can help then instead of once they hit the streets where it's way more money and there's no beds. We've also, so far I've been lucky enough that Harbor House on Wednesdays, he's coming out, another outreach worker with me, because I'm not allowed to go alone, even though sometimes I've done it and she gets upset. To the tents or to anything, I have somebody with me. And he's going to come on Wednesdays, and I'm also hooked up with another person from the vets. And he told me about their program through SVS, which will help with back rent for vets and will also help with 60 days in hotels, which has been a huge thing with us. But Robert O'Donnell is going to be an amazing thing with me, helping me with outreach and out there. I keep index cards right now on the people I do walk up to. Some want my help. Some tell me real eventful places to go to or whatever. But a lot of them I've taken SOAR training now, which will help them, because once they're told no by Social Security, they just walk away and they drop it. You don't do that. I've got one tomorrow. I'm going to help him come in and help him get Social Security. The problem I've noticed now is the very young, under 21, we cannot house them in hotels. They will not take them. I've been lucky enough that I'm going to meet in 2 weeks with Oasis in Claremont, and they do. They take 18 to 24-year-olds. My big thing is that Keene's a wonderful city, but let's branch out to other ones, let them know we're here, what we do, and they're relieved. And then they tell me about their shelters. And hopefully, I have lived experience of being homeless, plus I've run homeless shelters, and I know that to empower someone and give them a choice is wonderful. It is difficult when you do find somewhere and they say, no, I'm not leaving. Okay, there's a lot to, my big thing is the tents. They've irritated me since I got here, so that's my thing. I don't think they're an answer to anything. So since I've been working with SES and I saw tents going out, it was like, that's not helping, it's 10 degrees. But it's a big thing with me right now to try to get people who come to me and my name out there and give out my cards and give everybody. Some of the people too, I'm really glad that I can hook up with. They have a new outreach team with MFS. And a very good friend of mine, Morgan, who I worked at SCS, is on it. Those people that I cannot go up to alone, that I don't know they're they're going to be with me, and we'll be able to do it as a joint thing. Like, they can do this, we can do that, we can do that. It's the best thing now is we work together, and it's not just one team. We're a bunch. And like I said, I work in SCS. My adopted daughter, Lori, I get to call, and it seems it's getting daily more cohesive, and people know we're out there, and I'll come running, when I know I shouldn't, but I'll come running when I can. So that's my plan, just to try to get people to know options they have.
Thank you. Questions up here?
You talked about 18 to 21-year-olds not having, that hotels won't take them, and there's a place in Claremont. But what if those 2 or 3 age groups have jobs
Yes,
and work in Keene? I mean, they can't just leave to Claremont, because then
And
they lose.
They couch surf, and it's horrible. We have an exact thing here, and they're saying he's 20 and she's 18, and they will not. We can't get anywhere. I mean, but hopefully, like she said, I can couch surf for 3 more months, and then I'm praying that the shelter has beds. Like, and they don't, it took a lot when I realized there's like 80 beds for 200, 300 people. I mean, we're really hurting. Like, hopefully, she said she's safe and she's gonna let me know each week. She promised, but hopefully there's a bed and they can stay, because she works at People's Linen and she doesn't want to leave. And I get that. I mean, but the horrible choice, and I had to make that choice when I was home, as I'm from Philadelphia. I did not want to go to Pottstown. I went to Pottstown, and because of horrible care in the 90s, I was pregnant, and my baby was stillborn in a homeless shelter. It was not. But when I left that shelter, I came back and volunteered. I ended up running that shelter a year later, and then ended up being Woman of the Year for helping there. So I try to tell them, you may have to choose a bed. It's horrible. Over a job. Shelter, as opposed to being in the woods, has to be the priority right now. Hopefully, though, she's sheltered for 4 months, and I'll let you know.
I've been
Take me to
working with
find
that
them.
couple.
Pardon me?
I've been working with that couple. And
yes, and
yeah.
it's very heartbreaking. It's horrendous.
And, yeah. Even things like transportation, they use bikes to get everywhere. And
Yes.
They called me a few days ago because they had a flat tire and they were in another town and no way to get
I'll leave you
here,
my card,
so-
that way you can give her my I gave her my number, but that was just yesterday or the day before. I
Yeah.
don't think they knew.
But it'd be great as a city if we
Yes.
can come up with some kind of solution, because that's
Exactly.
only 2 out of many that I'm sure
Or-
in that same situation. And
Yes,
And-
and or the people, and me and Lori, when I was at SCS, noticed, and this is scary, people over 55, it's becoming an influx of people who are handicapped or ill, and they're homeless. And it's horrible, because you had a person die. We had a person die in a shelter because she had COPD just recently. So the very young or the very old, there is very little. And that's why she knows I'm on the phone with shelters all over the state. But like you said, they work here. I'm now telling them to upheaval their whole life and go here, That's why I hope to get the time to go visit them. I don't want to send them into that has some of them can be awful.
it'd just be great if we could,
Yes.
start thinking how we can
Yes.
solve that issue, because.
And I know that during the collaboration meetings, they have them every last Thursday. They're going to be on Zoom. Where even Rob said he wants to do with the evictions, but he also brought up people that are trying so hard, or they're living in their cars and then the cars are flat. Now they can't even get to work, and there's a whole little emergency things. And when you start to I was not on drugs, I was nothing. It was a custody fight against my husband at the time, and he had way more funding than me. And then it just starts going like dominoes. Their bikes now, they can't. And then by the time they're there, they've lost everything. It'd be nice if we could catch them before everything implodes. you know.
Especially when you know they're trying. I mean,
They are,
they're
yes.
both working.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
You just mentioned one thing, and I went to Japan last year to go to my grandson's wedding, and I spent like 2 weeks there, and I go, the culture was just totally different. Grandmothers and great-grandmothers were extremely important
Yes.
to their family.
I lived in Germany, same thing. The parents
And,
lived with them, yeah.
They educated the children, they saved the child care expenses and all that.
Mhm.
And then I come back to the United States and I go, holy crap, we're in peak baby boomer.
Yes.
And then and the majority of them who are collecting Social Security are women, a lot of them who couldn't work.
Didn't work.
Or, you know, I go tell my daughters, you know, up until 1974, a woman couldn't get a credit card unless
Nope.
her husband said, you have my permission.
Yes.
And
We
so-
have a guy, yeah, well, there's a woman who's 84 years old that the sheriff had me, and but she refused to go to Claremont, just refused.
but
So
we're
then we
talking-
put her into a shelter, but her son wants nothing. And you know what he is? He's a housing advocate in Connecticut, and he will not take his mother.
But we've got so many women in their 65,
Yeah.
70, 75, and they're maybe getting $1,600 a month on Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
That is just a big group of homelessness.
And how much are the rents
ready
here?
to
Yeah.
happen, because I may be a nice guy, but you know what? If I can charge $2,000 a month, bye, lady.
Yeah, it's exactly.
And you know, it's cold and crude.
But it's the
but-
truth.
But it's
the
a
truth.
fact.
Yes, yes.
And I just think it's a big bubble that we just don't want to talk about, because no one thinks grandma or great-grandma is going to be out in the street.
Well, she's 80-some years old, right? And she's in a shelter right now. And there's a few over, like I said, I noticed when I was running SCS's, the Roxbury shelter, the male shelter, 57, 67, handicapped, needed their hips replaced. The one guy worked his life off, but then cut off 3 of his fingers because the older he got, doing woodworking. Then you just saw this, and they're angry. They're difficult because they did work their life away, and they did, and they're not happy. It's difficult, you know, and I understand it.
I don't pity you. I wouldn't want your job.
It's an honor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is that all, fine? That's your whole crew. You good? HR.
Good evening. Human Resources Assistant City Manager, Human Resources Director Beth Fox. I am very fortunate because I have the privilege to work to support the talented and creative people that you folks see come to you and talk to you about the services and the things that they are trying to do to improve the quality of lives for the folks in our community, and in general make Keene the best place to be. So it's a great opportunity, and I greatly appreciate the talented team that I get to work hard to support. Human Resources is a department with 4 employees. We this year have been working hard on what many of our departments have been are working through too, which is basically transition. We had our most senior employee transition out of our workforce this year, so we spent a lot of time sort of analyzing what we do, how we do it, who has what duties, how we can streamline. It was a really productive and interesting process, and I'm very pleased that when we filled the position the position that we had to fill because of Vicki Flanders' retirement, who had been the rock of HR for more than 20 years, through more HR directors than I can probably count. We were successful, and I think have continued to be able to provide the things that our employees need. This year, we expect we will continue to focus on a lot of software. We are still working kind of working our way through deploying the various aspects of the Munis software in the human capital management system. We are also expecting that we're going to be spending a lot of time focusing on initiatives that are responding to some of the labor shortages and vacancy problems that departments are experiencing. We know we have a wage study and benefit assessment project in our work plan, as I think you folks have heard in the past. We have also been doing a lot in partnership with the city manager to develop and refine our incentive programs to target our most difficult positions to fill. As I think you are all very familiar with the long-term struggles we've had filling police officer positions. We have other positions that particularly technical positions that are creating challenges. And the impact of long-term vacancies is very difficult on departments and sustaining services. So that effort, I think, will be continuing. I don't take solace from it, but our circumstance isn't any different than almost every other community's. And we're all, lots of communities are doing lots of different things, and we're doing many of those things, and we're still all struggling. So what the ultimate solution in the end is in this changing labor market, I don't know, but we're going to work hard at it. Some things that we have done that, I think has tried to be more flexible in how we support departments in transition. The budget this year reflects the fact that when we think we have an opportunity to get ahead of a problem, we're trying to continue to do that. And there's a couple departments that will have requests that basically provide for an advance hire, which 5 years ago in the city, you were lucky if you got someone to you got authorized to fill a vacancy before someone left, never mind start to recruit and try to hire someone in advance. And I think that's going to be an important strategy, probably combined with trying to transition our exiting talent to being successful in the future. I think Elizabeth referred to one relationship that we're trying to continue to help us transition a function. I think we're going to continue to see that as a tool throughout the organization. If you look at our metrics, we have more hires, which this year than previous years. We have more promotions. Promotions are, it's great that we've had the opportunity to have talent within the organization prepared to step into roles. The only, I guess, the downside is then that usually does create another vacancy. But but I'm very pleased that we've got the talent in the organization to often step up and move forward. In looking at the HR budget in general, I'll call it the department operational budget has a couple supplemental changes. Two of them relate to basically training and dues and meeting expenses for new staff that we have onboarded in the past year and a half, and positions that we have upgraded to be able to provide, a position that we've upgraded to provide more professional HR services versus just administrative clerical work, and making sure that person's trained and can be fully deployed and professional in her activities with our workforce. Like other departments, our Acrobat Adobe licenses are up for renewal. It is a cyclical process, and that is a supplemental. So beyond that, I think that the operating budget for HR departmental-wise is pretty, just funds existing programs. We have a section under HR called citywide benefits. There are a few changes proposed to that area. First, in January or February of 2025, I expect that the city will begin to negotiate union contracts again with 3 bargaining units. The police officers, KCE and AFSCME, their contracts all expire in the end of June. So that we expect will take a little additional effort. So we have some additional money for professional services. We also have money to continue the training initiatives that we're doing internally. And finally, Tuition assistance sometimes can ebb and flow, but I see it as a good sign that this year we have more requests than we've had in the past. Employees also want to invest in themselves and want our help in doing that. Tuition assistance is a shared responsibility. The employees have to also put some skin in the game. So there's a final supplemental that deals with tuition assistance. And this year, I think we have 11 employees that have requested assistance. And within that, we also are funding a paramedic tuition program. So I think it's a really good thing that budget there's interest in that kind of activity. Regretfully, it does require some additional funding to support, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Jay Kahn. So in one sense, I'm glad the city manager hasn't brought forward a hiring incentive program. We would have seen it at the bottom line. But I'm wanting to just raise the question, because is this a tool that the city manager ought to have in her toolkit? And there are other cities who have given this consideration here in New Hampshire. I don't know the success that they've had. Maybe that's something that you do have some insight to. But there are some pretty strong numbers out there that perhaps are creating an incentive to, and it's a silver handcuff. It retains people for those initial years of hiring, and it could use just a one-time allocation out of reserves, as opposed to a permanent allocation to maybe test a program, maybe focus it, limit it to some vital services that are targeted by the manager. But maybe I'm striking a note that you've already discussed. And but anyway, I'm trying to tee up the conversation, because I think it's important to have the tools in the chest if we are losing potential hires to other communities.
Yeah. I think it can be hard to measure sometimes what the final impact of incentive programs can be. But you may have had a cup on the door to the third floor conference room over the past few weeks, because we've had several meetings and just made some significant revisions to our hiring incentive program at the fire department that focus on medical technical services for both paramedics and AEMTs. We are and paramedics are like, you know, if we can get one through a hiring incentive, it's a win-win-win-win. The AEMT incentives are generally focused on trying to bring in lateral transfers, which are folks from other career departments that have a little bit of experience in firefighting under their belts. We also made some adjustments about 6 months ago, maybe, to the police hiring incentives. You know, I suspect, and I haven't discussed this with Elizabeth, but I suspect that while we've had some success recently growing some of our own CDL drivers in Public Works, that there are maybe some other technical skill areas that we look at this. The state, I think many know, have some incentives in this area. So it's a tool generally that, for better or for worse, when we use it, we're funding it from salary dollars that are not expended because we have a vacancy. So it hasn't impacted the budget bottom line at this point. So you may have something you want to add, Elizabeth.
Just the short answer, we do have hiring incentives in the departments where we're having recruitment issues, and we are funding it from the wage lines. And we have recently made adjustments in both fire and police. And that's something that we continue to look at and evaluate and deploy when we think it's necessary and might move the needle in a certain area.
Okay. Any other questions for HR? And they all can find their applications online, right?
you can apply online, subscribe to our Get Notified of Jobs link.
And the guy that makes it all work.
The designated night closer here, right? Andrew Mueller, Director of IT. I had a AI write me a 35-minute budget speech I'm going to read now. So now, but I do want to talk briefly about some of the projects we've kind of completed in this last year. Two real big ones. The first one was the phone project, multi-year project that involved us using our phone vendor, the service providers, as well as the state 911. Not only did we replace all the hardware and all the back end that runs all the phones, but we also worked with the state to make sure that every phone has a designated location within the city, part of this Kerry's Law, and it really just kind of provides a safer environment. So if somebody does call 911 from any phone in the city, it tells the first responders exactly where they are, as opposed to just 3 Washington Street. It'll tell you the specific location. It's a pretty big ordeal. It's a really a cool project to be a part of, and we're one of the, anecdotally, we're one of the first cities around to do that, so that's pretty neat. The other big project, which you've heard a lot about, is Munis, that we kind of helped finish the migration on that. That's the financial system. That impacts our budget, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but working with finance and a bunch of other departments, it was nice to finally kind of get over the hill on that. We look forward to, this year, hopefully there's some smaller applications that we can maybe sunset and use Munis even to a greater extent. We'll be working with finance, who, of course, it's always tough to get their time. They're very busy, but we'll try to push through that. Patty mentioned the Microsoft 365 environment and SharePoint. She is an awesome advocate of that. We love her in IT for that. So we've gotten Office 365 out to everybody, and now we're doing SharePoint and Teams. We're rolling it out, and we're really kind of pushing it to the departments. The city manager's been really great at experimenting and doing adopting a lot of this stuff. Again, very appreciative of that. And departments are starting to realize that there's some real advantages to using it, some opportunities, and it's a great collaboration tool. And then the last thing I want to touch on is cybersecurity. It's what we do every day. It's in the news. The attackers, the bad guys, have really gotten more sophisticated with their attacks, especially in this past year. It's really forced us to kind of up our game. We go to conferences, we go to trainings to kind of try to stay up. We are on calls with DHS and whoever will talk to us on the newest ways to do things. We've adapted this thing, what we're calling protection in layers, which in the old days you had an antivirus and that protected you and you were set. Nowadays, there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing, so you need layers of security. And that involves us doing a lot of work behind the scenes. Sometimes it's very successful in covert. Sometimes it doesn't work exactly the way we want it. And we get a lot of calls, hey, why can't I access this stuff? It's in the name of security. And so we've been really kind of pushing us forward, the city forward, on security and making sure that we don't end up on the bad side of a story that gets in the news. Part of that is user training. Part of that is keeping up to date with our updates. Many of the people in this room will be getting Windows 11 if they don't already. We have a security device that we've had for a couple of years now that we just turned on a feature that basically will quarantine a system if it thinks it's infected, which is a really cool thing. So it doesn't spread. And anyway, I could talk for hours on this stuff, but we're 3 hours into this meeting. So very, very cool stuff. And then with all the projects that we do, those are 4 or 5 of the major ones, but we also do, I think this year we're going to end up in about 2,300 calls, break fix, by the end of June. So that's from July 1st to June 30th. About 2,300 calls of just users calling up saying, I need help with this. So on top of all those projects are the break fix. So we're a pretty busy group of folks there. So with that, we can talk some numbers. It starts on page 93. The meat of it's on 95 there. So I have three accounts that I'm responsible for. The first one, the 500 account, as I call it, personnel and operating. Luckily, we've had no changes in personnel this year. We have a great team together. As long as we can keep that intact, that's great. And the operating budget, on the middle of the page there. Again, it's another anomalous year, just like last year, where shockingly, our budget went down $100 or so, a little less than that. But that's kind of a little misleading because, again, Munis, this software, this financial software, half of it used to be in this budget. It's been moved now to another budget, to 501, which we'll talk about in a second. As a result, it left room for all those software contracts that go up every year and the cybersecurity stuff that go up. It left room for that, those dollar amounts to come up a little bit. So even though it doesn't look like our budget increased there, that's not something that necessarily will continue. I said this last year. We'll take the wins as we can get them, but I don't know if we'll get this win next year. So that's that 500 one. And I'll go over 501 and then I'll stop talking for a second and let you guys ask any questions if you want. The 501 is the cloud application budget. So that did go up. You can see that on page 96. That's due to several of the pieces of software out there. The first, again, is this Munis software. Now it's all completely in this account. So that's responsible for a bit of a jump. Patty talked about the Right to Know software. That's in this as well. And then one of the other big culprits here is the Microsoft 365 licenses. This is the first year where we'll have everybody on Microsoft 365. Last year, it was sort of incremented, so we didn't spend all of our dollars. So what you're seeing here, that number is sort of us right-sizing. It's not going to continue to jump up by, I think it was about $18,000 every year. It's going to be relatively stagnant. It'll go up as we hire more people, because everybody needs a Microsoft license, but not to the degree it did. So that's the 500s, the 500, 501. Any questions on that piece before I move to PC replacement?
I'm just curious, like, when we look at budgets for each of the different departments, what?
We thought you were shut off. It wasn't
Oh.
working.
Yeah. You wish. So, like, the clerk's office, for instance, has its own vehicle, but it comes, even though the vehicle department works on it and supplies them with the vehicle, it comes out of their budget. So, and a lot of the services that we offer come out of each department's budget. Like, why is this one not part of all of these different departments' budgets? I mean, why is it part of the IT's?
Are you talking about the 501 account, the cloud application? Yeah, that was a decision made a couple of years ago to kind of get all the cloud apps, the sort of the stuff that IT is no longer, I don't say we're not responsible for, but we don't control it. It's not on premise. So all these cloud applications were just kind of put in this one general fund. I don't know 100% necessarily the strategy behind that, but it definitely makes it a lot easier to budget and to kind of think about the numbers for, at least for how I look at it.
Yeah, I think the other piece of it is I've given Andrew more tasks to sort of keep track of some of these things that we might find in various budgets that are in different lines. And by putting them all into this line and into this area, we are able to more easily track who has what. And in addition to that, Andrew's been great about when we implement these projects, even if it is a cloud software, really being part of implementation. And when we are looking to bring in a new piece of software, reviewing whether or not it's something that would work with the software that we currently have in other areas of the city, because I was seeing a lot of piecemeal. Someone would buy something because they thought it was great for their department, and then it didn't really integrate great with some of the other departments or other functions. And so I've been trying over the last several years to sort of bring that more together so that we are making these software decisions as more of a city and less of a department.
Thank you. And you'll be happy to know this just died again, so.
Yeah. So good to move on there. So then if we go to the PC replacement fund, it's got its own tab. It starts on page 182 there. Real quickly on that, we always work with departments to try to help lower costs and make sure that their needs are met, but also if there's any sort of ways we can find, opportunities to save some money. This year, both the police department and the fire department did a great job. They are replacing their tough books with tablets, which are considerably less expensive than the tough books, and that was it was really great of them to step forward and accept that technology, and that saved the city a lot of money there. By June 30th, we will have replaced 89 computers in this past year. That's a little bit more than we expected last year because of some of these tough book things. That's a lot. There's one person, John Franny, who does the majority of that, and that's not his only responsibility, and that's a lot of work. This year, we have 138 to do, so almost 40 more. So he's going to be extremely busy. He works really hard, and so I wanted to give him a shout out because he's definitely racing around a lot nowadays. So that's it. I'm really fortunate that I'm the director of a really great team of folks. They do a great job, and we're all very lucky to have them. So happy to answer any questions there.
Questions up here?
Great. Thanks, guys. Good.
Close out?
Right. So Councilor Remy was just telling us the next meeting is Tuesday.
I've got it right here.
Okay.
So Tuesday, May 14th at 5:30. Scheduled community development, public works, parking fund, solid waste fund, sewer fund, water fund, and the equipment fleet fund. Is that it?
Yeah, that was it.
All right.
Thanks for everybody that came. We're adjourned.